when you get down to those classics and especially the customs, it's like someone calls for it's not starting and the fuel pump's not working, and you go and this car has had 24 pairs of hands in it. Could be professionally done, could be jerry-rigged. You gotta go, and you're just like, sometimes it's like, oh, this is really good. Like, this is built how I would do it. Sometimes you get there, it's like, what the fuck is this?
I am with Kyle and Nick from Taylor to Mechanic. We actually had some crazy viral shit, and I always tell you, like, with cars, everybody's got an opinion. So I'm bringing you guys back here. Hopefully it could be a regular thing where we talk about cars. So first thing I want to do is hit on, I'm just going to be firing questions because there was so much engagement on stuff last time that, so what don't you guys like about Fords? I'm just going to start there.
Well, we're seeing lots of timing issues. Right now, we've got probably 6+ F-150s of a 5.4, 3.5 EcoBoost, all of them with timing issues. So the newest Fords, timing issues are probably some of the biggest issues we see with them right now.
Right. And so you're dealing with just even the brand new ones.
Even the brand new ones. Yep.
Like I've got a Raptor. You guys looked at that?
That's the engine.
It's just so they're building a crappy engine.
Yep.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, they have their fair share of problems. Another thing I've noticed too is like it seems like the area in which it was made seems to make a difference. Like you can have the same exact year, make, model, engine. One was made in Canada, one was made in Mexico, and for some reason I don't know which one's worse, but let's just, I guess, say the Canadian one's worse. But it can be the exact same vehicle, but if it was made here for whatever reason, it will tend to have more problems than made there. And that could just be me. I don't know.
Yeah, it could just be coincidence, or you're just like always seeing the one from Canada.
Yeah.
So like, what vehicles are even made in the U.S. anymore?
Toyota, ironically. Mercedes.
Is that the only vehicle?
Mercedes.
And Mercedes?
Well, I mean, out of the international marketplace, I think Audi's got
one.
I mean,
it kind of depends on how you define made, because there's a lot of assembly plants where the parts, Ford's really big on that too. Actually, I think GM does the same.
Mexico now is where, because a lot of people don't realize the Mexican labor workforce is actually cheaper than Chinese or international Asian market workforce. So you get better quality products at a lower cost, because the cost of living in China and everything has gone up so much that it's actually not the same economically that it used to be, where a lot of parts were made in China, super cheap, lots of plastic parts. Now most of those large manufacturers have shifted to Mexico. One, the transit time is much shorter from Mexico to the US.
Right.
Plus there's such a large labor force there that is underemployed that they're opening mega factories. Toyota's got one, and we see tons of Ford parts that are made in Mexico, which I would definitely prefer to see a made in Mexico than over, a made in China part.
I'm 100% with you, man. The Mexican people are kind of like, I just feel like they're like our neighbors almost.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of times they're no bullshit. I mean, they get right down to it. I mean, you don't have to, deal with a whole lot of issues that you see with just inferior quality products. Chinese products, a lot of times tons of plastic, which when it comes to automotive stuff, plastic is not good.
Right.
You get expansion and contraction due to heating and cooling of running the vehicle, shutting it off, running the vehicle, and over time all those plastic parts, nylon parts, which is polymer and all of that, it all starts to crack and break down.
Wow.
And many of these manufacturers from the factory are putting out, like, one of the biggest issues I see with like some of the Passat and Volkswagen Audi with the 2.0 or 2.0 turbo or the 2.5, water pump housing is made complete. It looks like a snail, completely out of plastic.
Tons of plastic.
But you go to get the replacement part. Obviously, you can get the plastic one, but a lot of these manufacturers or secondhand manufacturers they're all cast aluminum now.
Yeah.
And which is like, why didn't you just do that from the factory?
Right.
I mean, cast aluminum isn't that much more expensive. Yes, it is going to be more expensive than plastic, but it's not that much more expensive. You're just passing the buck on down the line to the consumer, because it's just going to fail.
Yeah, and that's like, it's not just cars, right? Like freaking everything these days is like, when did it happen from like the Henry Ford kind of revolutionized the automotive industry, right? He went from like, he was competing, he had to get into that industry by actually like pushing his way, and by winning a race, I believe, if history serves me correctly. Like, they wouldn't let him in. The auto cartel would not let him in. He pushed his way in, made a great product, figured out the assembly line, actually raised the minimum wage, and did all that. And we and America was at its probably glory. We're building the Model T, we're building all this stuff, super proud. Stuff's built to last. And then the Industrial Revolution happens. We build all these great things, and now we're in the digital revolution. It seems like it's all about fucking people. Excuse my French. It's about like, hey, how do we make this thing fail as quick as possible? iPhone, car, whatever it is, so that they got to come back to the shop because we could just trigger something to go wrong.
Yep. I see it as the fast and hard. Just pump them out as fast as possible. Whoever can get us the product, which usually is plastic, can be made, faster, quicker, cheaper. I mean, they're just pumping stuff out as fast as they can with no thought of duration. I mean, cars back in the day in the 60s, 70s, 80s, I mean, there's still good cars around. Solid steel, good quality steel. Nowadays, I mean, you'd be lucky to get 7 to 10 years out of some of these vehicles, if even that. I mean,
I agree 100%.
Most engines nowadays, I mean, I see issues popping up anywhere between 75 to 150,000 miles. The days of 200, 250, 300.
I think about that all the time. Like this whole he's got these sweet cars in the 50s and 60s and 70s, all these classics. Like I think about all the time. Like I'll never know until I'm older, but I can't imagine myself being older, sitting back, talking to my kids or grandkids or whatever, and being like, "Yep, that's my classic 2015 Chevy Malibu."
Right,
it's just not gonna be there.
Well, my Ford Raptor as an example. Like I was like, I'm gonna pass this down to my son, and I'm like, well, he's just gonna have a big headache. You know what I mean? It's, the days of passing on the family vehicle, it's like
you're right.
It used to be a prized possession back in the day. I mean, getting your dad's Chevelle or Corvette. I mean, any of that. None of that is true anymore. I mean, there is so much inferior, engineering, use of products. I mean, you see all sorts of issues from minor to major in all manufacturers.
Well, you said it too. It's not just cars. Like another good example is for the company, we do buy new tools because we need them all the time, and make it up with a good warranty and whatever. We'll just keep warranting it. But at me and my house, I don't think I own anything that's post 1985. Everything's just old and it works. I have a bearing go bad, change the bearing. Motor goes bad, put a new motor on it. But modern tools.
Nowadays they do so much stuff that's factory sealed, stuff that you can't
you can't tamper with.
I mean,
what does that mean, factory sealed?
Well, the main thing I see with factory sealed is transmissions. There's no dipstick. There's no dipstick tube. There's no way to check.
It's just their way of saying, don't even try it.
Yeah,
just
bring it to the dealership.
Come buy a new one.
Oh, so what you're saying with factory sealed is that there's no dipstick, so I can't even check my own oil?
So you look
up. So they make it harder for basically consumers to do it themselves.
Yeah.
One of the, I guess a good example is Ford had a transmission. I can't remember which model it was.
Well, pretty much
it was considered a sealed transmission, but reality is the transmission has a drain plug that's a big plug with a small plug in the middle of it, and you start the car, and when it's sitting there in park, you take the center plug out and you check it as you would a differential. So if fluid starts coming out, just trickling out, then you're full. If you don't see any fluid, then you fill it till it starts trickling out. So you can service it. You can access it. It's not factory sealed. But, Joe Schmo that just wants to know if his transmission's got fluid in it, he's not going to do all that. He's going to take it to the dealer.
You lost me at everything there. It's hard enough to, change your own oil.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so there's tons of, nowadays with the canister filters and everything, you have to have special adapters.
All
you can
the
get
skid
the filter
plates,
off.
you got to get down there and you spend an hour just getting all the damn plates out of the way.
Yep.
Yeah. Mercedes is big on that, but one thing Mercedes did that I like is their dipstick tube is connected to their oil pan, so you can actually hook a vacuum to the dipstick tube and it'll pull all the oil right out of the motor. If you do that on a normal car, you might get a little bit, but on most cars, the dipstick tube ends as soon as it passes through the block.
Yeah.
So it's not actually going to the bottom. So you could try it theoretically, but you're not going to get all the oil out of it.
Yeah.
Man, you guys are smart with shit. It's
wow, you do it all day, every day.
Yeah, you got to, in what we do, you got to be quick thinking. You got to be forward thinking. You got to, when you have issues arise or you see something that's like, what the hell is going on here?
Right.
You got to kind of think through the process of, this isn't something that's just in a book. You got to really go through what is going on here exactly. Talk to the client, get information from them. Kind of really get a full grasp of what's going on, and cross-reference it yourself in your brain of like, what have you seen before? Have you seen this? Yes, I've seen this before. This is exactly what's going on here. But a lot of them anymore are so intertwined that, I mean, they're trying to make it to where you can't really service anything yourself. Things are, put in places where there's so much clearance you can't get things out. I mean, you got to lift motors to get stuff out, reset them.
There's an obvious divide between people who are making these vehicles and the people who are fixing them, owning them. Like a lot of it I really understand. People are trying to innovate. They're trying to make the next best awesome product.
Right.
And so you'll see, like he's talking about, like a lack of clearance. You'll see these big ass engines packed in these tiny ass little cars. And like you have to, like what's a good example? Like the Mini Cooper. Back in the day, the Mini Cooper, as far as I'm aware, I believe was the original front-wheel drive vehicle because they needed a small car that could hold a lot of stuff.
Right.
And back when they were rear-wheel drive, you had this big-ass tunnel down the center of the car, so they wanted to knock that out. So that they're the ones that figured out how to turn the motor and go front-wheel drive.
Okay.
Well, there's a gasket we've done many a times that's for the oil filter housings where the filter goes in. And this one little gasket costs you like $15 for the gasket, and you gotta do an oil change. Then you gotta spend 6 hours pulling the entire front end off the car. The bumper cover, the bumper support, the radiator, the condenser, everything has to come out.
If you know what you're doing.
If you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean 6 hours if you know what you're doing. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What if you don't know what you're doing?
Well, we see some people really screw some shit up.
I'm calling Taylor to you, mechanic, right?
Yeah.
We talked about at one point telling people that have already started their jobs, like we're not getting into it, but there's so much of it, and it can pay good money.
Well, and we kind of got to feel it out too. In what we do, we see so much stuff. You got to see what people are saying, and sometimes you can be like, "Oh yeah, there's no way I'm touching."
So
that.
you think that some people aren't honest with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
Like he said the last time, it's
I didn't
kind
put diesel in
it's
my
kind of
car.
like you're their teacher and like you're gonna scold them or something. It's like, I'm not here to do that. I'm here just to figure out what your problem is. I'm not mad at you or anything.
Yes.
Yeah, you screwed it up big time, but like we're looking for the solution here. We're not here to bash you. We're just trying to get the information to make sure we can make the most quick and timely repair and done correctly.
Right.
But yeah, we get a lot of people that just dodge information. They don't want to, be forthcoming with what they've done, or we'll get people that be like, yeah, it's been at 4 different shops, and it's like, oh god, what has 4 different technicians done in the time between then and now that we've seen?
That's one of the hang-ups when we do custom cars, because Gateway is one of our biggest, for classic cars, the consignment shop in Olathe.
Okay.
And they'll have their customer, if they have a car with a problem that they either won't pass state inspection to sell, or they can't move it, or if it's leaking gas or whatever, they'll tell the customer to call us, because they don't, it's just us and the customer.
They're on consignment, so they don't own it.
Yeah, so they
can't
don't mess with
approve
them.
anything.
But where I was going with that is when you get down to those classics, and especially the customs, it's like someone calls for, I don't know, it's not started and a fuel pump's not working, and you go and this car has had 24 pairs of hands in it, could be professionally done, could be jerry-rigged. You got to go, and you're just like, sometimes it's like, oh, this is really good, like this is built how I would do it, and sometimes you get there and it's like, what the fuck is this? You're like, oh my god,
meth and a lot of energy.
And of course, a lot of those people think they're sitting on gold, and you get there and you're like, dude, this thing's a polished turd. Like somebody's used like all sorts of just crazy shit, home electrical connectors for what should be, watertight butt connectors, and I mean, just all sorts of wild stuff.
Painter's caulk to fill in motor mounts.
Oh my god,
We've seen that more than once.
Oh, more than once. Huh?
We have a client who's a painter, and it's a Ford with what, a 3.0 in it. It's a Ford 500 with 3.0, and it's got this weird upper mount that goes to this big torque mount. And the mount is blown out, and this dude has caulked the shit out of it with white painter's caulk. And I mean,
Is it a good solution?
no.
Maybe for like a day or two.
I didn't know if you guys were giving me a cheat code.
No, maybe for a day, but
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen some wild stuff. He saw a Land Rover where somebody had literally taken tennis balls, taken the strut out, and stuffed them
forgot about
inside
that,
the spring. So it was
Yeah.
a spring with no strut with tennis balls in it.
No, it still had a shock in it. I can't remember her complaint. I think it was hitting the frame stoppers, which is like so that the axle would smash the car if you hit a bump.
Right.
So she took it to some shop, and instead of putting shocks and springs in it like they should have, they bought a whole bucket of tennis balls and stuffed them in there.
Oh, I'd love to call those guys
Dude,
out.
it was crazy. She couldn't remember who did it. I remember that lady. She was like ex-military. She had like just retired from the military, but she had been in all over the country. So she's like, I don't know who did that.
Tennis ball repair.
Yeah.
Like, hey, forget.
I mean, it worked. So
I mean, it sounds pretty. I've heard some crazy. I remember this guy had a '68 Bronco that I went to school with, and those are notorious for just taking off road and doing whatever you need to do. And like I remember him telling me the stories like, yeah, my fuel injector or whatever, carburetor, whatever went out, and I was like, well, how'd you get it going? He's like, I hooked up the windshield wiper to that and started pumping. And I was like, that's how, I don't even know how you did it.
It works. It works.
Yeah, paper clips and chewing gum and rubber band.
Oh yeah, we see some funny stuff. Like our grandpa just gave him an older Toyota truck, and we were actually looking at it today in the shop, and he popped the hood, and there's a fucking spatula under the hood.
Yeah,
a wooden spatula.
I'll do that too. Like
and we
I'll
were
leave
like,
like a rag.
what is this for? Like scraping gaskets.
I see it
or
all the
something?
time, and like I'll do it too. Leave like a funnel under the hood for when you're gonna, you need it on the road, or leave a rag under the hood or whatever.
Right.
And there was a funnel, and there was a rag, and there was a spare plug wire, and then there was a wooden spatula. I'm like, I can't think of what this would be here for. But I'm sure there's a good reason. Someday I'll hear it, and it'll make a lot of sense. But right now,
They need to leave a note next time they do that.
Yeah, right.
Like, hey, the spatula is for X.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you might figure it out eventually. You'll be like, oh, what the hell is that for? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you never know. There's some crazy tricks out there. Actually, we just used one the other day. The YouTubes come in handy, where we had a timing, and the timing was like one tooth off, and instead of taking all the timing down, make sure the tensioner has enough room to move a little bit. You stick an Allen wrench in there and turn the motor over, and it pops the belt up off the gear and allows it to rotate one tooth.
Yeah, you guys definitely need your own YouTube channel. Just the amount of knowledge that you guys have is like insane.
Well,
We've thought
and
about
filming just the repairs we do. Cause
yeah,
I mean, we
get
see
those Ray-Ban glasses where you're like first person and they're actually good, and you're like, yeah. I mean, that's the cool shit.
Oh yeah, I mean, because we work on everything. I mean, there's tons of content we could definitely do, but it's just the time involvement to cut it, edit it, all of that stuff. Plus, between the two of us, is twice as much, and so it's
If
just
there was
like,
enough
man.
interest in it, and somebody would help us out with the producing of it, then I've been taking a GoPro around and filming some jobs, usually just doing like time lapses and stuff, but it's
I think for you guys, like straight up, if I was to give you advice on it, just like a mechanic would be like giving you advice on something, I would say like those glasses that are like, because the GoPro, it's gonna be too hard for you to do it. You want to like be able to see people with your hands, what you're doing, like, and be able to talk. And it has a mic in it, so you're just like, hey, I'm up here underneath the chassis or whatever. I don't know cars. I'm up here underneath the thing. With those round circle things. And we're going to change that deal today. But that would be just, if you guys ever want help with that, just hit me up. I know that well. So let's go through some like questions. So first thing is, what is the absolute best luxury sports car? Not like we're talking a Mazda or Maserati. I'm talking like a real luxury sports car, in your opinion.
I mean, I feel like that's a broad window. I would say, like, if I had money to blow,
Any amount of money, you could buy anything, Nick.
Mercedes SLS AMG. I love those cars.
Okay.
With the butterfly doors, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It's like the Corvette.
It's
of the
like a
Mercedes.
Maybach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love those.
I had a buddy
things.
who had one of those.
Beautiful cars.
It's a pretty car.
Actually, when we got our Mercedes vans, the guys at the dealership were telling us funny stories about when they leased them. They were going for, what do you say, like 180,000?
Yeah, something crazy.
Or 180 to 250 or something. And the lease deal is you pay X amount for your lease, and then when the lease is up, you can either just turn it in, or you have the option to buy it. And when you have the option to buy it, it's that set price they give you at the beginning of the lease.
Yeah.
Well, I guess when those things were first coming out, they didn't realize how popular they were going to be because of the old Gull Wings.
Right.
So they were forced to sell on the lease these people that, $180,000, $200,000 for a car that ended up being like $1 million. And I guess they lost their ass on it big time. The guy we got our trucks from at the Mercedes-Benz Kansas City, he said it was a pretty big deal apparently.
Yeah, no, those are. What about you?
I would probably go domestic. I would love to have one of the new Corvettes.
Gay.
Yeah. I know.
They're
But,
going down
I mean,
in value. I just heard.
Yeah,
They have
I'm
electrical
more
problems with
I'm
that.
more interested in them just because the engine platform, the drivetrain, and everything in those.
Yeah,
I
being
mean,
mid-engine's really cool.
You know,
for sure.
when you're talking about all those expensive cars and everything, I mean, most of those cars aren't driven daily. They're
Yeah.
not, weekenders, small travel. You don't see a ton of problems pop up with them just because there's so little drive time with them. But, if you're going to daily drive or drive it frequently, I would go with the Corvette, with either a 6.2 in it. The LS platform engine's tried and true. I mean, they're phenomenal engines.
Right.
And plus, I just like the look of,
They look
a
good.
domestic.
Yeah, they do look good.
Looking,
Yeah.
like some of the European cars, the Ferraris and the Lambos and stuff like that. Yeah, they don't look exactly like them, but to switch to a mid-engine setup, I mean, I think they just look cool.
What's a mid-engine setup?
So basically, it means your engine is between the axles. Effectively, it changes the weight displacement. So you can have a rear engine where the engine's actually sitting behind.
That's a
it.
Porsche, right?
Like a Porsche, like the old Corvairs, the engine was in the back of it.
Yeah.
And then of course the front engines,
Well,
the
and the
Corvettes,
old
all the way to the C7s.
Beetles and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Beetles
those
and-
ones, the Volkswagens.
Yeah.
People love those.
Oh, I just saw one that looked like a total Baja one like 2 weeks ago. It was looked like a damn near sand rail.
Yeah.
Big ass mufflers
cool.
out the rear, half the engine sticking out the engine cover. You got frame sliders on it. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Didn't they manufacture those during World War II for the Nazis?
Yeah.
A lot of them, yeah. Hitler loved, Volkswagen. Yeah, Volkswagen. I don't know if it's Volkswagen Addy Group or it might just be Volkswagen back in the day, but they have a very rough history.
Did you know anything about it?
I
think
don't know
they-
a lot. I know that they were. I'm pretty sure one of the primary funders of the Third Reich.
Yeah.
Hitler had a really good relationship with, what was his name, like Franz something, or
Yeah,
whatever his
something
name.
like
Hitler also was given as a gift the very first ever convertible Beetle that ever come out of Volkswagen.
I think they were also making tank engines.
Yeah, they were also
was their
manufacturing
big-
a lot of military equipment for the Nazis
Yeah.
as well.
Did you know about, do you know what Blitzkrieg is?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the Lightning War. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so you're polished on World War II. Did you know they were feeding those guys meth?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, have you seen the video of Hitler at the
In fact, that's
1930
why
whatever Olympics?
that's
have
why-
you seen that?
Uh-uh.
You gotta look that up.
Oh,
It's
what
black
is
and
it?
white. It's at the Olympics before
Yeah.
during the war, and he's just like, he's sitting there watching, and he's just like fucking weakened, man.
Well,
He's
and one of the main reasons the
like
1911
he is lit.
yeah, one of the main reasons the 1911 was created was knockdown power, because they said, the 9mm and the 38 special wasn't dropping these guys because they were so amped up on amphetamines. So the 45 caliber in 1911 was created for knockdown power for these guys that were amped on amphetamines. So yeah, I mean they were.
Making a lot of sense though, because they were talking when originally they planned to get to France in 3 weeks, and I guess it took them 3 days. And they were just like fucking hammering through.
They
they say-
Japanese were doing the same thing
Yeah,
too.
Japs were the same
Japanese
thing.
were amphetamines and stuff, because I mean those guys were climbing through rat trails, and I mean
I'm pretty sure they said that's how the
tunnels.
Germans. So everyone always said, like, when they made their way into Russia, that they should not have lasted nearly as long as they did because of the winters, and a lot of people attributed it to the meth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to win a war or try to win a war,
I guess.
guess.
I mean, granted, back then they didn't know it as we know meth today.
Yeah.
They didn't think it as crackheads.
Well,
They thought it
shit,
was
back
just
then
like
they probably had the pure shit. It was probably 10 times better,
Yeah, I guess originally what I saw was that it was actually manufactured for like on a daily usage, like
Oh,
just
yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they like Devo or Vivid or something like that. I just read about it the other day, and then they're like, "Oh, let's just give that to the troops and give them more of it,
Right.
Because we can get a lot of, and that's the whole Panzer attack."
Pharmaceuticals in the 20s, 30s, and
I'll say it's
40s
probably-
were
it's
wild.
probably Bayer.
Coca-Cola with cocaine.
It's probably
and
Bayer.
It probably was
Bayer. You've heard about Bayer, right?
No, not heard about. I know who they are.
Just as bad as Volkswagen, well, worse than Volkswagen. Bayer was like, they had deals with the Nazis. The Nazis were giving Bayer Jews to run human experiments with their pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of innovation in the Hitler era, right?
Oh,
They
yeah.
were using humans as
Oh yeah,
Exper-
Dr. Angel experimenting on twins, doing weird shit like that. That's
you guys have taken some deep
it's
dives.
some fun. It's fascinating. I love to go back in history and just see, like, sometimes it's just like, what the hell were people thinking? I like to try to get myself in the mindset, because in today's era with Google and your cell phones and all that, you can find information immediately. But back then, somebody told you something or they're working on something, you have no choice but to just sit there with your own thoughts and ponder on it. And I think that's how a lot of this crazy shit happens.
Right. There was something I was just watching the other day, which was actually pretty cool, about not World War II, but the Korean War. Because, social media feeds you what you like, and I like that type of stuff.
Right,
so, like, all of a sudden, this guy, they're like, they bring this guy up. I'll give him a shout out, Ron Rosser. I don't know if he's still alive, but, like, he's like, yeah, I was the son of, I was the oldest of 17, and my brother got killed. And so I went out there pissed off, and he killed 4,000 Chinese people himself. Wow. He said I guess he was a mortar man, so he killed 3,600 people by mortar and 400 by hand.
Nice.
And he was just like, I mean, but like, and it got me to thinking, like, and it's kind of going back to what I was originally talking about, but it got me thinking, like, what are we known for in the U.S.? We're known for being a fucking heavy. Like, what do they call us for? Like, what are we in Ukraine for right now? We're in there, well, obviously to launder money, but, you know what I mean? Besides laundering money.
Nowadays is different, a lot different than back in the day.
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays,
there's so many proxy
if you ever turn
on
a VPN one day and make it look like you're not in America and try to get in some of like the social media or like chat rooms, and people either A right now are like, are you guys okay? Like, what's going on over there?
Oh, in the U.S.?
Yeah. Or B, they're like, oh, America, there must be oil. America's here, and it wasn't always that way. But I think you're right. Back in the day when Americans showed up, they were like, oh, thank God they're here.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But we were known for that because we built our, like,
reputation.
They brought us. We built our reputation on it, and then we went into Vietnam.
We still had morals and values back then.
Right, we still did. So what? I mean, it's just kind of like we're kind of in a fucked up situation.
Oh,
right?
definitely. I see stuff all the time of like people in other countries. Like I saw one just the other day where they're showing a video of Nancy Pelosi up on speaking, and they were like, "What the hell is going on in your country? Like, you guys are nothing more than just a big asshole now. Like, you guys are not what you used to be.
Yeah.
It's just a big ass joke."
Well, and it's just the part that drives me the most crazy is like some of this, it gets chalked up to like party lines, left, right, whatever, or they're just crazy, and we've all heard of Trump derangement syndrome, and then you'll hear people going just super hard on Biden at the same time. And what kills me is like, I don't care which side you're on.
Right.
Like when we had the investigation, that special investigator investigated Biden and basically said they're not going to charge him because he's basically just a senile old man.
Yeah,
Everyone's like, okay, that makes sense. No, it doesn't. He's the leader of the free world.
Right.
Like, come on, bro. Like,
Yeah.
if that's happening, I'm sorry. That's horrible that you're losing your mind like that. That's terrible. I feel bad for you, but get the fuck out, dude.
Right,
Like, I have a life to live. I have a family to raise. If
Well, you know what's kind of, and we're going a little off topic, but I enjoy it. So, like, one of the things, like, I was telling my wife the other day, and I'm like, we're in Kansas City right now. We moved here from Las Vegas. I'm from Seattle before that, and we're building a house in Florida. And I'm like, I told her, I said, like, if we keep going this way, like, whichever way we're going, I said, we're like in police state right now. We go to the airport, TSA. Like, they're not there to help you. It's for your safety. It's for your safety. Like, the other day, Daddy and I are trying to run through the airport with our golf clubs, and the guy's like, no, you got to check him out. And all of a sudden they're like, no, you got to take those back. You can't run them through TSA. You got to actually. I'm like, because I was just gonna check him at the gate.
Right.
I'm like, why? Because it could be a weapon. I'm like, what about this stroller right here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, have you seen? There's been studies that show like TSA is catching like less than what I don't remember the number. It was like less than 30% of actual contraband. Like people are still getting knives through, not intentionally, but they're missing shit left and right. Drugs are getting through. Like
drugs always get through.
I mean, there's those several Americans right now. I think in I can't remember what country island it is, but they flew from the U.S. there. I don't think it's St. Lucia or something like that, but they have like 1 or 2 rounds of ammo, which is a 15-year mandatory minimum in this country. And it's like, well, TSA didn't catch them. You obviously didn't bring the gun there. It was just in the suitcase still. And now you're being held in this country because they found 1 bullet in your luggage. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man.
Like, you're supposed to be checking this stuff. You didn't catch it. And now this person's looking at 15 years in another country for 1 bullet that's not even, they don't even have the gun with them. Like, wild.
There's just like, there needs to be some regulation, like I think where I'm at on things is like, you don't have any privacy.
Oh, yeah.
Like with the internet, they haven't regulated the digital companies.
Oh, just wait! Apple just announced all the devices are about to have AI.
You guys are on the know. Yeah,
you gotta be, man. I feel like not being in the know is how we got to this place.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I used to joke when I would talk to people and they'd be like, I don't care about politics. I said, you know what's funny is if you cared more about politics, you would be able to care less about politics.
Right.
That's the irony. We only get here because no one's paying attention.
100%. Like when everybody's, and that's the sad thing is like when everybody's like passing these rules, which I'm going to go into next. Like, what about the electrical vehicle mandate? Do you think?
Right.
I mean, okay, tell me what your thoughts are as a mechanic. Is that taking us in the right direction? Is it just a bunch of BS?
It's a bunch of BS.
We'll never be off fossil fuels. It's not possible. I mean,
We can't fly a plane with an electric charge?
You know how much a Tesla weighs, don't you?
No, how much is a
A
Tesla?
Tesla weighs like, what is it, like 6,500 pounds?
Yeah, I
like
mean,
they're heavy.
The Hummer
heavy.
EVs weigh over 9,500 pounds. They've released new NHTSA studies saying that the new guardrails and everything aren't even properly equipped because these are so low weight bearing vehicles that they just blow through these guardrails.
Yeah, there's no way.
So you're talking about a Hummer that's a gasser. The OG Hummers weigh 7,000 pounds. The new EVs weigh anywhere from 9,000 to 11,000 pounds. They're low weight bearing. They blow through guardrails. I mean, you're talking about a totally different change. When you get in an accident with an EV, they're not just hitting them; they're hitting them and driving them further.
Yeah.
I mean, you're amplifying accidents. Which when an EV Hummer hits a Honda Civic, there's no freaking way that thing's going to be able to hold up like it would with a regular Silverado hitting it.
No,
they're just not meant to be hit with that kind of weight and ability to drive through.
Well, and then like the political push, I guess, if you want to call it that, or the environmental push. So you were
it's politics.
It's all politics. Because if you really, really get into it,
you've paid your emissions up front. You're not paying them as you drive with a gas vehicle. You've paid them up front.
The people that tend to care about it the most, the really crazy, I'm not saying everybody that cares about the environment. I'm talking about the people, like the Just Stop Oil people, and those, like the people that swear that they're big hearts and they love the environment, they love people. Well, nobody has anything to say about the slave labor that's getting these metals to make the batteries. That and then
what about that?
Yeah, just on the environment.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
And that's what
as long as it saves the environment.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by paying your emissions up front. A lot of these people are like, oh, it's no emissions. Sorry, you already bought your emissions right up front.
What do you mean by that?
I can't remember his name.
All the slave labor, all of the mining, all the lithium, all of that is paid up front. Whereas when you're making other vehicles that don't require all of this lithium and mining and all of this,
well, beyond that,
you'll never put out as much pollution in a gas vehicle as you will have already paid for an EV up front.
I can't remember his name. He's the CEO of one of the largest vehicle battery manufacturers in the world, and I believe he's testifying for Congress. It was some large setting. I can't remember what it was, but he said like the emissions we produce to make one battery is about equivalent to the entire lifespan of a gas-powered car.
Yeah,
and I've heard that before too.
And that's what's so ironic. These people think they're saving the environment. It's like actually you've done more detriment.
And you can even
environment.
let's call that conspiracy. Oh, that guy's lying or whatever. We could take it to the next step down. You're plugging it into the grid that, first of all, can't handle it. If we
look at California right now.
How's the grid
300,000 plus electric vehicles that can't be,
they're not getting powered on hopes and dreams.
Well, let's take it a step further. I mean, the electrical companies aren't really super regulated. No. So, like, you give them complete monopoly.
Oh, absolutely. Like Excel Energy in California and all of those, they're like the sole provider. You don't have, like, even here, you've got Evergy. That's it.
When have you seen an Evergy truck?
When have I seen one?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen some of their little white F-150s recently.
But when have you ever seen an Evergy truck working on anything?
Only when there's a huge storm.
Pretty much never. Yeah.
Never, because they're just white labeled. Yeah. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah. They contract.
They just they got the political power to go and get that contract, and then they just subcontract everything out with a local place here. So Evergy's just dealing with all the customers, and that's why it's such a shit show with Evergy.
Yep. And then they keep
we have co-ops. out.
Ooh, tell me about those. I know I've had those before. They're great, cheap utility bills that everybody kind of shares on the whole system together.
Oh, co-ops.
As
in
far as
general
like the
are
political
usually-
aspect of it, I don't really know how that all works. But
No,
I know
just
that's
how a
not,
co-op
like,
works.
privately owned. It's not privately owned. I believe if I understand correctly, it's kind of like a what do you call those businesses? Like
Employee-owned.
employee-owned type of thing.
Like a credit union.
Kind
Yeah,
of.
For
Yep.
utilities.
yeah, basically. Yeah.
What's your utility bill like?
Not great, but I also have a terrible, terrible air conditioning system that I need to update desperately. It is running 24 hours a day right now. So.
Oh, is it?
But to answer your question, on average, right now, full AC, $220, $240 a month.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not terrible.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
listen,
I'm on
My
average,
water
I mean,
bill is like $55 a month.
Yeah,
I
no.
even accidentally spilled a swimming pool one time and refilled it a second time, like 8,000 gallons, and it was like $70.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on KCMO service, and I mean the water bill every month's unexpected because they count rainwater in with it. So
What?
Yeah, total bullshit.
Oh, okay,
so
let's
my water bill will be anywhere from $60 to $180 and fluctuate everywhere depending on how much rainwater we get because they count all of that in there with usage.
He paid for sewer bills in Kansas City for like what was it,
4
4
years,
years, and
not
then
even
found out he
connected
was
to the
never even
city.
connected to the city.
But they wouldn't write me a check. They would only credit my account after I got hooked back to the sewer.
We started digging to give him a better garage in the back, and we got like 6 inches down. It was like, where's this water coming from? Well, turned out his house was built over the original house, and the original house basically had a septic system that was
It was
just
homemade.
It was a
concrete
whole
homemade tank.
Yeah, and it had like cardboard liner, and it had bust through while
Yeah.
we were trying to dig this because no one knew it was there.
Yeah.
It was never on a map. It was never in
Yeah.
utilities.
So they were billing me for 4 years of sewer usage, which I was not getting. It was going into this busted box.
Yeah.
So then I paid to get hooked to the sewer, contacted them. Of course, they wanted evidence. I'm like, dude, you sent the
Come
inspector
look at this
out.
hole in my yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't write me a check or give me my money back. So I didn't have a sewer bill for like 5 years as they just like credited it
Yeah.
until it went to zero. And I was just like, dude, KCMO, man. I don't know,
Yeah,
years ago.
there's some crazy stuff going on out
Oh,
here.
man.
I actually just left the city today. I had a meeting with one of the councilmen, but we're trying to do some stuff. It's just really hard. It seems like everything's so like not about getting stuff done. It's about like, you know,
gentrifying everything. And
Well, it's about money.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's about. It might be about money, but it seems like these days it's more about like.
Dude, I guarantee you, if you could somehow see the payroll for Kansas City employees, I bet you there's probably a couple people that are making far more than they should be.
yeah.
It's just like the homeless. I don't know if you've read about that at all. Joe Rogan, I think he had a thing with what's his name, Colin Noir. He's a big YouTube guy, but he had basically went and investigated and found out that, like in California specifically, which is the capital of homelessness right now,
Right.
there's employees that are meant to handle this homeless
Yeah,
crisis,
making like
making
six
$250,000 a year, and they're not doing shit.
But
I
they
mean,
explain that it's easier to keep the problem going than it is to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? It's cheaper to keep building these makeshift places and whatnot than to actually fix the problem.
Yeah, I think that's just like a bureaucracy type thing. Like right by my house right now, they're repaving the road again. I've lived there since 2020. This is like the third time. It's like almost annually because they don't want to do it the right way because it's too expensive. But they'll sure as hell pay
Oh, man.
over and over again to do it the wrong way. It's
Kansas
like,
City is the king of pave it, tear it up, and do it worse every other single time they do it.
Right,
it
and
gets
do it
worse.
proud, do it
Yeah,
proud.
Do it proudly, too. Terrible.
I had
Yeah.
my car lowered for like 2 weeks and then driving around Kansas City streets, I was like, nope.
You were where?
I had my car lowered.
Oh.
I lowered it like, I don't know.
Well, that's right. You guys are a bunch of rice guys, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So some of the I wanted to go actually through some of those comments.
Go for it.
Let me pull those up right now.
That one, I was in tears reading that. It was so funny.
That one, and then the one where we're talking about diesels are more, fuel efficient.
Yeah,
You got-
my phone.
Yeah.
People were talking about their semi getting 5 miles a gallon. It's like, well, that's not what we meant. A fully loaded 80,000 pound semi.
Yeah. We're talking about efficiency, not actual like sticker MPG.
Yeah. And we're also not necessarily talking about 18 wheelers. We're talking about your customer or
Dude, I found
Not
I
necessarily
love trolling around on the
residential, but-
internet, and I have found that some people take everything you say so absolutely literally, or just like add context that wasn't there or whatever.
Oh, listen, I got pulled over. I told you I had that prosecutor on. I got pulled over at gunpoint. I was telling her the story, and this guy's like, "Prove it." I'm like,
By the cop?
yeah, like
Cop pulled you over at gunpoint?
oh yeah, like at gunpoint with my kids.
Felony traffic stop?
Oh, for sure, 100% felony traffic stop, and put me in cuffs, put me in the back of the squad car in Platte County, and I was telling her about it, and they're like, "Oh, you did something wrong." I'm like, "Dude, like I didn't do anything wrong." Like, and they like, "Well, get the body cam." I'm like, I asked for it. They said they didn't have it, and like I could do the whole thing, but it's like people just want to push back because they don't even believe it's possible, or they think like.
They can do no wrong.
Yeah, you must have done something wrong if you got pulled over. And then it's like, well, now how does it feel to be black? I'm like, dude, listen, does it help that the guy who pulled me over was African American? Like, does that take you off? No, it doesn't matter what I say. Somebody on the internet's going to have something to say about it.
I don't know. I think that the internet has created that. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. They're like, we're in a climate right now that Jesus Christ himself could come back and walk across water in front of everybody, turn water into wine, do all the miracles, and people would be like, "That's AI, bro." like no one's gonna like. You don't know anymore. Like it's impossible to tell, and especially with AI, like it's getting real good.
I'll start with this one because it got 5.8 million views, guys. I don't know if you saw that. 5.8 million.
Nice.
Like that, I mean, I didn't even look at this shit. I just knew it was going off. And I think, so this is the one.
Just say Ford Mopar, Dodge Chrysler G, terrible. So.
Oh yeah, some of those comments were killing me too. People, it's the longest, more on the road today than blah blah blah. Like
this guy says, how cute, worst model F-150 2005 bought new with 17 miles, has now 270K, never been to the dealership. What do you say to that?
Hey,
I've
there's
never taken a
anomalies
car
in
dealership.
everything. I've got one that I just looked at yesterday, 220,000 on an EcoBoost F-150. Bought it from the interior minister or interior whatever from Michigan. Thought it needed a VVT solenoid, which is in part of the timing reading the oil control valve and everything. And I get out there, I'm like, dude, I scan the codes, I listen to it, look at it, and all of that. I mean, it's just clacking. I'm like,
yeah,
dude,
you're always
got
get
timing
some one-offs
issues.
for
He's like,
sure.
well, it's got 220,000 miles on it, and I was like, man, you made it really far because this is an anomaly. This does not usually occur. I mean, there's almost always something. A lot of it, also comes back to maintenance.
Right.
Nowadays, I find so many people that don't check their oil, don't check anything. They just drive it until the reminder comes on the dash.
Well,
that's kind of how we're trained, right?
Exactly. And then, you're 5 quarts low on a 6-quart engine, and it's like, your engine starts having timing issues within the next 10,000 miles. And it's like, well, why is this piece of shit? And it's like, well, if I remember correctly, you ran it down to 1 quart of oil, and you've probably done that more than once. And so that has a lot of detrimental internal effects. I mean, heat, abrasion, you get all of that. So yeah, we see
even
a lot.
beyond all that though, to that guy there, I'm glad you're one out of billions at this point vehicle.
Yeah.
And let's take a look at it. He's one guy talking about his car, and you guys see how many cars, right? So it's like,
hundreds
okay,
per
you're that one guy, and I'm glad you've never had a problem.
Yep.
And maybe you are the meticulous guy who does everything.
Yeah.
Which that's how you get there. I mean, if you're meticulous and stay on it, like I tell people, don't just look at the reminder. Check your oil like once every 2 weeks. Establish a baseline.
I tell everyone when you're getting gas, put the handle on there, start your gas, pop your hood, check your damn oil.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's talk about what's
Pull
the
the
right way to
dipstick.
check oil.
Pull that dipstick out, engine off, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it out, and check it. There's all either hash marks or on some cars there's 2 dots now.
There's always going to be some kind of indicator.
Yeah,
it's
some
either going to
sort
be
of
like your dipstick will be straight with like these 2 little chips in it, and
Right.
maybe you're low and high, or you'll have the hash marks.
Or you'll have 2
And
dots.
all you got to really know is that that's a 1 quart spread. It's not your full capacity. It's the top 1 quart, and they call that your safe zone. You can be anywhere in that safe zone. So if you got a dipstick and your hashes are this big and you got this much to the tip and you're not seeing any oil, well then you know for sure you can at least put 1 quart in.
Yep.
And if it doesn't touch there, then you can put
Then you
another
can put another quart.
Baby
Exactly.
step it.
What's the average car hold in quarts of oil?
5 to 7.
5 to 7. Yeah.
Isn't the Porsche take like a lot more?
It depends on the
Yeah, it
engine.
depends on the engine.
But you'd
so
also
some
be
manufacturers do it to make the oil last longer, like between changes, and then also because some engines like will run hotter, they'll have extra oil, so it has extra cooling time.
Right.
Like your average diesel is going to hold no less than like 10 quarts of oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like
Unless
that's
it's
a good
like
example.
the smaller sedan.
But yeah, diesel
diesels.
trucks. Sorry, yeah.
Diesel
like
trucks
truck,
are going to
yeah.
hold anywhere usually between 10 to 15 quarts of oil.
Yeah. But
And
then-
how often should you change your oil?
well, so-
Depends on the vehicle and the type of oil and
Yeah.
the age of the vehicle.
And
So
also-
I use synthetic.
Also, how and where you drive makes a difference as well.
Yeah.
I think people hear the answers they want to hear because I'm gonna tell you
I
this.
tell most people for the average consumer between 5 to 7,500 miles.
Okay.
You know-
I always tell would say between 3 and 6.
Yeah, I mean,
like our Mercedes, Mercedes tells us it's a 20,000 mile.
We
oil
do it
change,
every
and I
10.
said you can go fuck yourself. I'm not doing 20,000
Yeah,
miles. That's
no.
crazy.
Oh, I
Because
like that.
the
I like when
problem-
they say that. I'm like, okay, perfect.
The problem with that is
You guys do this for a
I
living. I gotta take it.
don't do that because I
Yeah.
feel like that's just
That's
when we were talking
asking
about,
for
Yeah, when we were
problems.
talking about the whole planned obsolescence, like I wouldn't call that planned obsolescence. I feel like that's them being like, "I'll make this dude blow his shit up. Watch
Yeah.
this."
He'll be back.
He'll be
Yeah.
back.
And
That's
to
exactly
that
right.
point, that kind of goes with what you said about we're trained, to wait for the reminder. Well, people just get in their mindset that I just need to watch for 10,000 miles. Well, once you get to 10,000 miles, you're 50% capacity, 30% capacity.
Right.
You've
Yeah,
already done the
there's
damage.
a lot of variables there, man. Because like you can have a car its entire life, you bought it with 0 miles on it, and
Right.
up to 150,000 miles between oil changes. You never lost a drop. It was always completely full when you drained it for that oil change. Everything was fine. You're not leaking underneath. You get past that point, you're still not leaking, but then you're going to start burning oil. It's a natural thing that happens with
Yeah.
every engine in the world.
It ha-
it's metal on metal. You can lubricate it all you want. Shit's going to wear down.
Yeah.
And like that's the one I know off the top of my head because I asked a guy at service at Honda about it. The 3.5 liter V6 Honda motor. They say at 150,000 miles, it is perfectly acceptable and normal to start consuming oil. So you just have to stay on it. You can't convince yourself, well, I've done this 1,000 times before, it's probably fine because yeah,
One
it probably
time
is.
it's not.
The key word is probably. It's
Yeah.
not guaranteed
I mean,
to be
any
fine.
engine begins to consume oil usually about 50,000 miles and above. And the amount that it consumes just depends on type of engine, type of driving, and how many miles beyond that is. Like my Yukon has 267,000 miles. I have to put a cord in about every 3,000 miles. That's not too terrible, but some of these manufacturers, people don't realize the manufacturers put out a basically the okay amount of consumption.
Right.
And it would shock people how much consumption is tolerable within these manufacturers. You look at your engine, your car, whatever, and think, you shouldn't. The oil you put in should be the same oil that comes out, and that's not true.
Yeah.
You can have loss through valves. You can have burn off. I mean, once you start to drop in oil level, you get drop in pressure.
It's a very
I mean,
well known. It's been doing it. I mean, since the beginning of machines to the point like you don't really hear about it so much in America, especially because right here a lot of people just don't give a shit. But like in Japan, it's actually law. Like you cannot drive an engine past what is it like 55,000
50,000
miles
yeah.
or something like that
Like-
without a rebuild or something because it's such a densely populated area with so many motors that after that point
They don't want it
they know
smog.
you're
Yeah,
burning the
exactly.
oil off.
Right.
Exactly.
No, and that's how you get Japanese engines from like JDM, so cheap.
JDM,
They're
yeah.
like brand new motors to
He-
us. 50,000 to us is like
Nothing.
That's nothing.
Most service intervals for the first major service interval on most any cars usually is between about 75 to 100,000 miles. That's like your first break-in period.
Right.
But I see people all the time, as soon as they start creeping to 100, start thinking about a new car, and it's like,
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
this
when you
thing
go
is
to-
not anywhere near
You go to the
dead.
parts store and you go down the oil aisle and it's like high mileage for 75,000 plus. It's like that's not,
Not high
that's
mileage.
not what I
Everything's
call
about
high
marketing and branding.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
yeah, for sure, yeah.
But you see, like, even at the auto parts store, the lifetime oil, put it in, never have to change again. That's sketchy. I mean, you're going to have consumption,
Well,
you're going to have
I believe
loss.
that. That's a good marketing brand.
Never.
Oh,
I would
man,
never
never.
do that.
And I mean, that's like buying pumpkin spice, oil.
You know what's so funny? You just gotta say that. Like my oil strategy came from my buddy's dad, who used to change his van with Mobile Synthetic, and he's like, "That's I don't."
there's
think
some diehards.
brand allegiance, yeah. There's
so. I'm allegiant to synthetic oil, not Mobile,
Yep.
but
Well, synthetic's good.
So that's what my question was going to be is like, should you, when you're changing your oil, What's better, synthetic or the regular stuff?
Synthetic.
I mean, most modern
So-
cars synthetic oil. I mean,
Even
for
old cars. So here you're probably going off that old wives' tale. If you use synthetic oil, it messes up your motor.
or it causes
No, I
leaks.
just I don't like to change my oil all the time, so was told by this guy.
Synthetic's better all the way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from how it's been explained to me, and I went down this rabbit hole because I was hearing it started with this old timer we had. He insisted we could not use synthetic in his truck because synthetic makes your engine leak. And I was like, what?
Well, I think Dad is actually the one that told us that naturally derived oil is rice shaped.
Yeah, on a molecular level, it's rice
Rice
shaped, so it tends to clot like blood. It creates scabs, if you will.
Yeah.
So if you have a leak, you've sprung conventional oil. That conventional oil is going to kind of build up around it and stop the leak.
Coagulate.
So if you use conventional oil in this motor and it's never had a leak that you've seen, and then you switch to synthetic. Well, synthetic is perfectly spherical
Yeah,
shaped.
it's lab created.
It's bouncier, it does a better job lubricating and protecting, but also it scrubs really, really well. So you've had all these scabs in your conventional oil, you go through a synthetic in there, well now you've cleaned out all your quote-unquote scabs, and you didn't
The synthetic didn't cause the
You
leak.
didn't make the leak, it just exposed the leak.
Could I put my old oil back and just fix it again, or what?
I certainly would.
You could try. I wouldn't do it.
No, I mean, I see
Do the
people,
old sawdust in there.
I every once in a while see people who, I just had an oil change. Can we save that oil? I'm like, I wouldn't. I mean, you're going to have oil, metal shavings, contaminants, especially on some of these cars, they put shit like right under the drain plug. So the first thing it hits is a cross member and runs over the cross member. Well, what's on the cross member? Salt, brine, dust, sand, everything. So
Well, plus
you want
oil
to put
breaks
that
down,
right
too.
back into your engine?
Yeah,
Like,
oil
no.
breaks down too. So like another aspect too is like, let's say you had that newer vehicle, you went 6, 8, 10,000 miles, and you check it, and you're like, oh, it's still full, we're still good. No, it's not. Oil
Yeah.
will break down.
There's detergents that is
Okay, so
added
that's
to
the
oil.
key thing is the oil breaks down. It's
Yeah.
not about
it's like the difference between trying to use like
Oil has a shelf life.
Yeah, it's a lubricant. So imagine I don't know.
Canola oil.
I can't think of a
separating.
non-sexual.
Yeah, I was following you. I figured that's
Like,
where we're going.
imagine-
Think of
You started with KY jelly and you ended up with water.
Yeah,
That's basically
exactly.
where that's
You
kind
get
of
a
how
separation of the materials.
So which one would you recommend?
Coconut oil.
100%.
Coconut oil.
I've got an amazing podcast. We've had over 150 entrepreneurs, investors, businessmen, businesswomen, politicians, and we have interesting conversation. Think of it like Joe Rogan meets real estate meets going down the rabbit hole as Troy Kearns. My podcast is something that I really enjoy. The guests that we bring on are super informative and they will add a tremendous amount of value to you. Comment the word podcast and I'll send you a link to it so you can check it out and let me know what you think. Worst car, you've said it before, is the Ford. What's the
I wouldn't say
worst because there is.
What's the worst car?
I don't know. I'd almost chalk up a Dodge product.
I would say, well, it depends on the year range, but like right now. Like right now.
Scat Pack.
Yeah, the Mopar 3.6 comes with like the
Oh.
Chargers and the Jeeps and all that. Those things are such fucking junk, dude.
Oh yeah.
We just drove a Jeep the other day.
Yeah.
It was crap.
Timing issue. Well, that's the thing is when they're in perfect condition, they're a dog. They're horrible. They're so slow. They don't have any power.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It was like a two-banger.
No.
And I'm like, oh,
They come in a lot of them Jeeps now, which I'm like conflicted on because I've always liked the Wrangler's legendary. Everyone
Yeah,
likes
totally.
a good Wrangler,
Yeah.
but then they put this crap motor in there, which it's just.
I mean, the newest Jeep, the only one I would go with the newest Jeep is the new diesel motor option.
Oh, I'd go with the 4-banger turbo. They have a 4-cylinder.
Well, I mean, or that one.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
go with that one.
Yeah.
So if you're going for a Jeep, either get the diesel or the four-banger.
Yep.
Or
and
call
the
it a
reason
simple
why.
LS swap you want.
Yeah, well, I'll swap you one. The reason I say for like the diesel motors, I'm in a couple off-roading groups where the guys like to tow, their campers or stuff.
Right.
The 3.6 motor with what it's mated
I
with
would
for
never tow
with the transmission, no freaking
Never.
way. No way.
Not in a million
I mean,
years.
no way. I mean, the transmission's a huge weak point, and so is that engine. I mean, we've seen everything from timing issues to, we just had to do a complete top-end rebuild on a Jeep Grand Cherokee 3.6 with only 80,000 miles
like
for a
80,000
blown
miles.
head gasket.
Yep.
How do you blow your head gasket?
Well, this
Overheating's the number one way to do it.
Yeah, overheating because
Yeah.
everything's aluminum now for the most part. Aluminum heads, aluminum block. You get warping.
Well, even back in the day, that was the number one way to do it. But aluminum has a huge part to play.
So
in it,
it's not having your radiator cooling down or
Well,
water pump goes out, radiators clogged,
Yep.
which
So like
that's
for
pretty
this
rare.
client, I think their water pump had been leaking, but because there's splash guards underneath, they had never seen it hit the ground, and so I think it had been going on for some time to the point
Well,
where
he didn't know. So the thing about a head gasket is it's not what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks, oh, head gaskets
blows one way.
Oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
It can
Okay,
blow-
break down because I had my head gasket
can
blown.
blow-
Daddy had
it,
his,
it can be that way.
and it turned into
So-
chocolate soup, and he's like, "Oh, you're
So
screwed."
it's like
So it
a
can
dozen
happen-
ways a head
Yeah,
gasket
so if you
can
look at
blow.
a head gasket and how it goes between the head and the block, you got your cylinders or your pistons are moving up and down, and all around it you have all these little oil and coolant passages. So you can have compression, which is where the cylinder, blows up, to coolant, compression to oil. You can have oil to coolant, and you can have all these different crossroads.
You can have cracks in
What
the
you're
cylinder
talking about,
walls.
what you're talking about is, there could be a crack where the coolant is now moving into the oil, and when it blends, we call it peanut butter. It looks like peanut butter.
Yeah, I've seen it. Remember,
But like this guy we were talking about, I believe his was a very, very mild coolant to compression because he never even knew it. So what would happen is he'd start the car.
Very first startup of the day. Only the first startup of the day.
He'd start the car and drive it around, and he would never notice anything. Everything would be fine. It wouldn't overheat because it was small enough that it wasn't really putting a lot of compression into the coolant. And the coolant system, as they all do, would get hot and it'd pressurize. That's how they're designed to work. Well, then what would happen is he'd drive it around, it'd get hot and pressurized, wouldn't overheat, it'd be fine. Well, then he'd go and park it, and as it sat there and not running, all that highly pressurized coolant would slowly seep into the cylinders as it depressurized, and it'd be sitting in the cylinder, and then the next morning he goes and starts it, and for the first 5-10 seconds, it just fog machine.
Run
just
rough,
straight.
the whole nine.
Oh,
yards.
yes.
But then,
10
10 seconds later, that compression kind of works its way back. Everything seems totally
It's
normal.
kind of like that. It's like once you don't see the problem, there is no problem.
Exactly.
Like the minute my wife sees the engine light go on, because she's like, and they're really
I
tuning.
wish mine was like that. I'll get in her car and
Mine-
I'm like, what the fuck is going on with your car?
Yeah,
like,
mine
I'm a
too.
mechanic, right? Like, call me. Like, what the hell?
And I think that's why my wife won't say anything. She'll
Like
be like, yeah, it's been
10,000
on
past
for 2
oil?
weeks. I'm like, dude.
You know
I
we
can
do
bring-
this for a living.
Yeah, I can bring a scan tool home and check it out. Like, it takes 5 seconds. Like, God, tell me if there's a problem. Like, it's been making that noise. I'm like, bro, you're about to lose a fucking wheel. Like,
Come on. That's funny though. Customers do the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll have customers have us test drive cars for something completely unrelated, and we'll be back like, you should not drive that.
Yeah, yeah.
At all.
I had one just the other day where it was for an EVAP issue, which is becoming a lot more common on these cars for dissipation of gases or gas vapors from the
EPA.
gas tank stuff.
Yeah.
So I put it on there and wanted to test drive it afterwards to make sure under a drive cycle that nothing else would come back. And I took it for a drive and I came back and I was like, dude, I know your wife drives this, but did she say anything about any noises? And he's like, no, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure both your wheel bearings are bad in the back. Cause he's like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, you drove it today. Did you hear a loud droning noise? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did it get louder as you went faster, like an airplane? And he's like, yeah, it did. I'm like, yeah, you got bad wheel bearings, dude. Like, he's like, so what does that mean? Like, what am I at risk of? And I was like, well, the wheel bearing has the hub assembly or the spindle in it, and as soon as that separates, the wheel comes off with it.
Oh.
I mean, it'll just
So it's
go.
It'll
the
pull
bearing
the
is
brake.
locking it in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most of them are pressed into it. Like on big trucks, they're called hub assemblies. They're usually bolt on. You got where your lug studs are. That's all one piece. On some of these smaller cars, they're pressed into the bearing, but it can still de-sleeve.
So it could just fall off.
Yeah,
Literally.
if it's a
Exactly.
drive wheel, the axle will go through it, and if you're lucky,
And bolt
you'll kind of drop a little bit, and the axle will kind of hold it all together.
It'll usually
but if
ruin
it's not
the
a
axle,
drive
but
wheel,
it won't.
you'll just watch that wheel drive away without you. There
Yeah.
it goes.
So, like, what are the biggest things, like, when you're driving down the road that you see with people that you're like, oh, before I go there, okay, and I know this is coming from a mechanic perspective, but I'm coming from, like, it hasn't mattered perspective yet, but I put 87 octane in everything. Okay, no matter what I'm driving, my Porsche, whatever, I'm putting 87 octane. He's like having a heart attack over here.
So most cars, you're fine with that.
Okay.
But what people don't realize what the octanes mean is the higher you go in octane, which obviously as you get to jet fuel, you're getting up in the 120s plus of octane.
What does octane mean? I don't even know.
Octane's a
Octane
chemical
is
component. So basically, your octane level is how stable the fuel
yes.
is.
Okay.
So as you go up in those, what that basically means is that it has a more expected and precise fire explosion. So it's
Okay.
not as all over the place.
That's one of the primary differences between diesel and gasoline. Like, have you ever heard the nightmare stories about someone accidentally putting gasoline in a diesel?
Oh, I've done it.
Yeah, so gas is
On accident to my mom's car. She had one of those, the bugs.
Yeah.
Volkswagens.
Oh, a TDI diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it only cost me $1,200 to fix.
You know
I
what's-
thought it was gonna be a lot worse.
If you're lucky, you can get lucky, but that's the thing is, so diesel's really stable. So how diesels work is they just compress hot air, and then it just solely by injecting the diesel into that compressed hot air, it ignites. If you try that with gasoline, the pressures that diesel fuel reaches, right at, like either at the cylinder or before the cylinder, dude, it could blow up in the line on its way to the cylinder. It could blow up in the injector. It could blow up anywhere. You don't know. But the reason it matters in cars and why I made that face about the Porsche is your Porsche is probably tuned.
For
So
a high octane.
this kind of goes a little deep, but basically, you know, kind of how an engine works. You know, the pistons pumping and
Yeah,
So
I took small engines in high school.
yeah, so most people think that your engine has just pulled in all this fresh air and fuel, and it compresses to the top and hits the top and then fires. That's not true. It actually fires on its way up.
Yep.
That's where you have top dead center and before top dead center, and like distributors when they have timing advancement, the more vacuum that pulls, if your engine's moving faster, it, instead of, you know, when you're idling, it was firing right before the top, and then now you're full rev, it's firing a little bit further before the top.
Right.
And the reason it matters is because if your engine's tuned to have that delay in timing or that pre-ignition, if it doesn't fire when it's supposed to, if it fires early or if it fires late, it's good. If it fires early, you can literally, you're like a hand grenade, blow your motor up.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it fires late, you're not going to really hurt too much there. But that's why it matters, because
Yeah.
it throws the tune. If your vehicle's tuned to a certain octane level and you don't use that octane level, you can have any symptoms from either just running like shit and just being like, this isn't right, to straight blowing the motor. Now, that's,
So if you
that's,
go to
that's pretty
Colorado,
rare.
definitely don't use 85 because Colorado has 85.
Oh, really? Yeah, I would definitely. If it was cheaper, I would definitely
It's
use
cheaper.
it. Oh, yeah. I saw one actually the other day, just in where was it? Florida, or it might? Yeah, I think it was Florida. I was just there, and it was like one for a hybrid. Have you seen these yet? It was
Is
like
it the
a
hydrogen?
Is it an unleaded or or no ethanol?
something like that.
Because there's gas stations here that have ethanol and non-ethanol.
It was the cheapest gas, and it said for hybrid vehicles.
Interesting. I'm not.
Yeah, it was the first time I had
Hybrid or
it.
for flex fuel.
It might have been flex fuel.
Let's say it might have been a 50-50 blend. It might have been gas and ethanol,
Yeah.
like E85.
What's that for?
So that's grain alcohol, basically.
it's corn
Around the
fuel.
time of the '08 and all of that, when the EPA and Obama was clamping down on fuel regulations and everything, fuel prices were, skyrocketing. So they were looking for alternative fuels, and that's when you started seeing corn alcohol or ethanol
Right.
integrated fuels. That's
Is
when
that the biodiesel type of thing?
No, that's when you started seeing all the flex fuel. So
Okay.
like my Yukon, I can put in straight gas or I can put in ethanol gas, it'll run. But the difference is ethanol or grain alcohol burns much hotter. Much hotter
Yeah,
than
racers like to
regular
do
fuel.
E85 too.
So that's why when you see some people say, well, my car's tuned on E85, well, they are running a really hot fuel. But anymore, you can almost not even find gas stations that even offer
Right.
E85.
Right.
So
I think hydrogen is probably going to be the future. I think electric cars are going to fall off. And hydrogen
well,
is
supposedly Toyota has
Toyota.
scrapped
So we
their
were talking
E-
hydrogen water.
basically.
Yeah, I mean
No,
Toyota.
We talked about that last time about that guy disappearing after his.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I don't mean like you'll be able to put water in your
Damn
car
it.
and it'll drive. I think it'll be more
It's like
like
take a piss.
yeah,
right.
Well,
Ran out of
there's
gas. Don't worry.
Supposedly Toyota's scrapping their EV investments and switching to trying
straight
hydrogen
yeah.
because
I
they
think it'll
that
be like
that's the new-
propane trucks basically. It'll be just like a gas station. You'll just force it and lock it in, and it'll feed the gas in.
Yeah.
It'll.
Okay.
The only thing I don't like about that is like I just don't like the idea of having compressed flammable gas in my vehicle. It just doesn't. I mean, gasoline's scary enough, but
Well,
I
sometimes
mean
outside-
accidents happen.
Well, they just did an interview with on Dr. Phil with with Trump. And
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you remember, I thought his answer was so good. It's like, how do you deal with it? He's like, out of sight, out of mind. Like, how do you deal with all the heat? And sometimes, like, with vehicles and stuff, you kind of got to, because you have so much damn knowledge about it. Like, you must, like, every single thing, you're like, saying, right?
Anytime I drive my vehicle, he drives his, we're constantly, most people get in it and drive.
Yeah.
We're constantly like, what the fuck is that noise? Where's that sound coming from?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here?
Everyone has their personal qualms, I guess, about
like my
cars.
wife just turned the radio up, and I'm like, that's not solving any problems.
It's solving the one that's annoying her right now.
Exactly.
She's like, it's fixed.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
So I'm getting ready, like, when I look at cars, obviously I was going to still drive my Ford Raptor, but now I'm like, all right, it's time to get a different vehicle. I'm going to keep my Porsche until I decide to upgrade. I like that car right now, but I was thinking about getting the Lexus GX 550, which is it's their newest, but the newest SUV. It's based off the old one that used to open out, and it's kind of a square. It's like almost looks like a Land Rover now.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, these days you can't even go to the dealership to see the vehicle or to drive the vehicle.
Yeah, like pre-order them.
Yeah.
Because they're just not available. Supply chains are just all over the place.
Do you think that's intentional?
I think some of it is. A lot of it had to do with all the chips, during that whole wave of issues. Because we saw, even here in Kansas City, being a center hub of the nation, there's lots with just thousands of
I would guess a
Fords
lot of
sitting.
it probably has to be a status thing as well.
Yeah.
Like, just like
Some of those
Joe
are
Schmo walks
pre-ordered.
in off and is like, I want to see this car that you guys don't have in your lot. Well, like, can we get it here? I'm guessing part of it's probably like, this guy's not gonna buy this fucking car. We're not gonna bring that in here. Like, you kidding?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably a large part of it as well.
Yeah.
I think I don't remember who it was. It was my old neighbor. I live in Raytown. Was talking about Jeremy Franklin when they did the last.
Oh yeah, I like their ads.
Yeah, the last model of the Evo. Yeah.
My kids sing them. You got a good company when the kids sing in your. I don't know how good they are as a business.
What's funny is Mitsubishi's is like one of the fewest cars we see ever.
Yeah.
It's just because so few people own them.
I had a Mitsubishi, a Mitsubishi Eclipse. One of my first cars was a rebuilt.
That's probably like one of the only common
Yeah,
cars
but that's
you see
the
is
older
Eclipse.
ones that were really good.
Yeah.
You talking about like a DSM?
It was like a 92, I think it was.
Yeah,
A 92 Mitsubishi.
Yeah,
that was
my
a fun
first,
car,
my first
man.
car was a 96 Talon all-wheel
An
drive
Eagle
turbo.
Talon, which
Yeah.
most people have never even heard of an Eagle Talon, but that was a
I think
car.
I remember that. It was kind of like a Baja-ish vehicle, right?
No,
it's
it was just a rebadged Eclipse.
Yeah, it's an Eclipse.
Oh, rebadged Eclipse.
with the turbo hump in the hood.
Yeah, those things were
all-wheel
awesome.
drive
I
turbo.
loved my car, man.
His was all-wheel drive, which was like.
So basically, it was essentially like an Evo 3 with an Eclipse body on it. So it was all-wheel drive, single turbo, 2-liter, good gas mileage, pretty decent power, and you could build the shit out of them. That motor it's legendary. It's called the 4G63. I'm sure this will break some hearts on the internet. The 4G63, they used it in 9 of the Evos. In the 10, they went with the I think it's the 4B11, which is a bunch of trash.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. But the 4G63 is a legendary motor, and I would kill to have one of those things again. But they're just it was such a powerful little package and so cheap that you just can't find them anymore because everyone bought them up and blew them up. That's just
What do you think is the best? Like, so I like, from driving in a lot of different cars, to me, the best experience that I've had so far are 2 brands. Infiniti being number 1, and that was a while ago.
That's
surprising.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
That's a Nissan. So
Yeah,
that's
so I was
surprising.
a Nissan guy for a while. I went from Infiniti Q. My first one was a Q39. No, the original, the Pathfinder that was the Nissan ripoff, like that original one, and then it turned into the Q.
The QX, 60 or whatever.
Yeah, the QX.
Yeah.
They've changed that model a lot. I don't think it's gone for the better, but that used to be my best vehicle. And then, I went and switched to something else. But I really feel like the Porsche that I have is the best car. Like, in terms of just built the best.
What is it?
It's a Porsche Macan. It's like the soccer mom's version of the Cayenne.
As long as it doesn't have the 3.6 in it, because a lot of people don't realize that 3.6 that's in that is a Volkswagen motor. We
All
had
of them are.
Yeah, we had a client in
All of
Hallbrook.
them are?
We had-
Volkswagen Addy Group.
Yeah,
they do Porsche.
And we had a client in Hallbrook that we went out to do a valve cover
Yeah, we were
on.
talking earlier about
He,
Volkswagen.
he
Dr.
had no
Porsche.
idea that it was a Volkswagen motor, and he was pissed.
They almost all of them are.
Yeah, but he didn't realize that because it's branded as a Porsche, and then you get in there and you're like, oh.
Yeah, you don't even know what
That's
you're
a-
getting these days, man. You might have like a Porsche that, like you said, has a Volkswagen or a Ford that you
Yeah.
know it's
Well,
like
the Beetle was Dr. Porsche's brainchild. Yeah, Dr. Porsche was another big Nazi ass. Same with what was the dude that did the uniforms?
you've gotten down to some World War because I know all the battles and stuff like that, but I'm trying to.
Well, I got into it because I got fascinated with like how the hell people were following him, and then I realized, and then I read into it, and Germany was not doing well economically, and you had this guy that was promising, and also it blew my mind on Joe Rogan. I know we totally got off topic. Sorry.
It's all good, man. It's awesome.
Oh, it's Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss, the classic Nazi gray uniform with the armband that like.
Yeah.
Was, set the Nazi thing aside. You're like, it looks pretty good.
If that said like Taylor's.
That was Hugo Boss. He was another big one. But yeah, I think it was Joe Rogan or somebody I saw recently. They had real-time English translation of Hitler's speeches where you all see him like,
Deutschland.
yeah, all pissed off, and you associate with the Nazis and anger and whatever, and then they translate it, and he's basically just like, we're gonna bring our country back. I'm gonna save us. Like we're gonna do okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna be fine. And then I'm not in any way trying to say I agree with what Hitler did, but when you understand the people were having a horrible time in their country, economically shot, and you have this guy come out of nowhere who promises you he's gonna save you. I mean,
Well, they had put him in prison before that too.
Yeah, I mean, they came out of World War I just in shambles after that whole deal. And
so I read all that.
It was the Treaty of Versailles, I believe, that really pissed them off because it made the German people like they started everything and they were kind of cast. They lost all their land. They lost a bunch of stuff, and they're like, "You suck, and you're not going to."
Well, yeah, I mean, original Prussia, which was encompassed, Germany. I mean, their footmark was like 10 times what it is today. Original Prussia, when it had Otto von Bismarck and all of that, back in those days, was much, much larger than what it ultimately ended up being when they, after the Treaty of Versailles, shrunk them down and took all of the land and everything. So, when they came in around the 20s and 30s, as he was getting popular, I mean, they still were in economical shambles. So, they were trying to basically pull themselves back up. And how do you do that when you've got, Russia on your east, and you got the free world on your right for the most part, and you're kind of basically pigeonholed. So
that's why I went down that rabbit hole, because I just one day was just like, how do you convince an entire population of people to go with this nonsense? Like, that's crazy.
Well, yeah. Well, I think.
Well, there's a lot of agricultural. I mean, Germany was
it was
much
big on the propaganda. The people couldn't find their own information, so then you got like they're dropping pamphlets or training guys at like 6, 7 years old to become like a soldier, like all that stuff, just complete brainwashing. And then, they start seeing a victory, and obviously everybody likes a win, right? Like, oh, we won, like whatever it is, we won. Like,
it's a story as old as time.
and then when they first rolled into like Poland and stuff like that, the people were like actually happy to see them, because they were Germany, and that was the whole situation. And then then he got a little bit, what they call that, drunk on power, right? And then he's like, all right, I can take the whole freaking world. Let's go.
Yeah.
Just give all these soldiers meth.
Supposed to be
they were sweeping countries within days.
Yeah, let me ask you a few more of these questions before we rock and roll here, because I want to get to a couple of these. So, this person, they call me Chell, says that she already says, confirmed the Jeep is shit, can't wait to sell. It says, completely agree. I have a Jeep. They suck. Okay. Another guy, my 450 has a.
Now see, like, remember though, that's modern Jeep. Old Jeeps are pretty badass. Like a Jeep with a 4-liter in it. As long as you can maintain it and don't overheat it too bad, those things are bulletproof, man.
Cherokee, Comanche, all the originals.
This guy says, I worked at a Dodge dealership years ago, and the service department stayed busy.
I bet. During COVID, when they had all of the supply chain issues, service departments were reaming people. I mean, I got people coming to me for estimates that were 4 and 5 times what we ultimately completed the repairs for, because they weren't moving inventory. They were screwing people in the service department.
Yeah, and there was also some kind of weird contract thing going on there for parts. Like, we had a guy with a V6 Ram who needed a fuel rail, and the dealership were like, sorry, bro. This was like in October, and he's like, we're back ordered out until like July, like the next year. And so,
or they won't even give you an ETA.
well, so
they're
then
just
he
like, we're
got
on
on
back order.
He
It's
got
like,
on I think it was direct from Mopar and had it in like 2 days. It was like, how is that? Like, how can he get it from Mopar in like 2 days, but this dealership is back ordered till like July? And the only thing I think is they probably got some kind of limited contract with some kind of supplier, and they're not allowed to buy outside to,
like GPO
maintain.
type pricing where you're contractually held within, and if you get
There's
caught
always
ordering-
some sham or some scam or something going on.
Anytime you're dealing with franchise dealerships or what do they call those, like manufacturer dealerships, I mean, there's all sorts of weird.
Well, there's too much consolidation these days, right?
Yeah.
Like, dude, what are your choices on phones?
Well, I think there's a lot of too much regulation too. I think regulation started with good intentions, trying to make things stable.
Right.
But I think also the private market automatically regulates itself.
Right.
If you're making shit and people are paying to repair it over and over and over again, people are naturally going to migrate away from the shit. That's just how it works. We don't need you to step in and say, stop this shit. Like, we'll get it. It's fine.
I mean, it's kind of like what I see with just our regulation and laws in general. Like, yeah, we're the free world, but like, we're the most like law held down free
we're not
society.
we're not as free.
We are constantly trying to come up with a law for this, a law for that. You can't do this, can't do that, and it's like, dude, where's the freedom?
Well,
like,
they say
you're constantly regulating everything into the ground to the point of where is our freedom?
Well, I've always
freedom
heard,
of choice. Right now,
I've always heard the basis for a solid democracy is property rights. Try not paying your taxes.
Yeah, for real. I mean,
that
I've
plays out
seen
for you.
stuff now of the freedom or the right to repair, where they're trying to regulate where you can actually take vehicles to be repaired, which is just mind blowing.
Right.
So
when
when I
you
hear
guys,
something like that, that makes me think you're gonna go in there, you're gonna say, sorry, we can't fix it. You're gonna have to buy that electric car.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and kind of what you guys are talking about, we're all on the same page there. Is when I talk to my wife, I'm like, listen, I'm looking at countries these days and be like, because it's not just like the local municipalities. I mean, like, okay, great. Kansas City's got better laws than Vegas in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But they're not that much better.
No.
Right. And then as a state or the country as a whole, you're looking at like, all right, like the fact that people get excited about saying like, hey, we're going to raise the taxes. Like, dude, just because you're not paying taxes because you're below the poverty line or whatever the case is.
oh, it's the classic, make the rich pay their fair share. Like, bro, we have the most progressive tax system of any country ever.
For real.
The rich are paying their fair share.
Right. And then what happens is you get these other people who are like, okay, I don't have it. Give it to me for free. Like, we went out and did some polls in the street and we asked people, who are you voting for? Biden or Trump? Biden or Trump? And if they'd say Biden, we'd say why. Say Trump, they'd say why. People who voted for Trump, who I would say were poor people, they would say because he gave me money. It was a very simple answer, like, I got a check.
Basically, deregulation or lowered taxes, essentially.
Well, no. It was like the stimulus money. The actual, they were like, he gave me a stimulus check. I like that guy. He gave me money.
That was that cost all of us. I mean, that wasn't free money. That cost all of us dearly. So.
Well, that's the other thing is like, with cars, right? You have all these requirements. You've got to get insurance on it. And that insurance is not for you.
Oh, no.
It's for the finance company.
Yep.
It's for the car company.
It's the what ifs.
It's just to cover, like, if you don't make it whole, we're okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who cares about you? Unless you buy that other insurance that you need.
Well, and between state to state, it's crazy. So, like, in Colorado, for instance, just because I'm out there a lot, their emissions laws are crazy. I mean, compared to here, in Kansas, it's a lifetime. Once got the car in the state, you never have to inspect it again. Missouri, it's every 2 years. In Colorado, you have to have
10 years.
Well,
if it's more than
if it's a new car, it's 10 years. But if it's an older car that's over 149.999 thousand miles or greater than 10 years old, it's every 2 years. Colorado, the emissions requirements are crazy.
Oh, in California, they're small.
I mean, even more in California, and what's funny is when I go to Colorado, there's a lot of Californians moving there, just like in Texas, and the locals do not like it.
Right.
They do not
No,
want
because
that shit.
historically people migrate and they vote for the same dumbass
and
policies.
those people do not like that.
Well, that's what somebody we were talking about in Tennessee yesterday. I was talking to somebody. I was like, "Yeah, man, the place is." He's like, "I don't even recognize it anymore." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "All those West Coasters are moving here." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the West Coast." He was like, "Well, don't bring your bullshit with you." And I was like, "Man, I don't 100% agree that it's like because watching my sisters." Who are still in Seattle.
Well, it depends on where in the West
I would
Coast.
never want to be in Seattle.
Yeah, so I'm from Seattle, and I can tell you it wasn't like that. It's a logging town.
Yep.
Like, that's how it started. It was a logging town and an airplane manufacturing town, okay?
Yeah.
What happened from the Amazon boom, even with Microsoft, it wasn't like, I grew up with Microsoft. Microsoft's been around forever.
Right.
Like, that didn't really affect things. We had nice stuff, whatever. But when Amazon really got going is when that whole city shifted, because on top of that you had all the Microsoft offshoots like the Expedias, the Zillow, the Redfin, all of these technology companies. So you attract massive amounts of talent, which means that they're having these high paying jobs. And now you see all these people are displaced. Like my sister, God bless her soul, like she's cannot afford to buy a house now because
it's outpriced.
Yeah, she's like, for a shit box that. And just even the real estate that we're selling in Tacoma, Washington, we bought for 60, 70 grand less than 10 years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We're selling it for $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say $500,000.
You guys saw it happen over here.
Yep.
Like during the COVID shift, these houses I was buying out in the rough parts of town, we'll call them.
Yeah.
40 grand. They're selling for $100,000 right now.
Yep.
Nothing changed.
That plus the freaking tax nightmare.
Jackson County's.
Oh my God!
Why are they doing that?
McCann Beatty.
I'm not in
McCann
Jackson.
Beatty, they use that whole software system that they ended up finding flaws with, where you had like over 10,000 homes to the exact cent amount on property value. And then they showed some homes on Ward Parkway, which for people who don't realize, what Ward Parkway is, those are multi-million-dollar homes. There were some that went down in value, and it's like those aren't homes that go
Well,
down.
I had heard that when this all happened, that everyone's values went up and the taxes went up. I had heard that, I guess it was the mayor of Blue Springs or something, mansion was suddenly worth like not nearly as much.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
people were like, "What the fuck is that?"
The big thing with is you're outpricing embedded residents, elderly people who've been here forever. You're outpricing fixed income people. You were literally trying to take their property from them. And then what do? Somebody comes in, bulldozes the house, and a big ass gentrified house 5 times value goes in it.
Right.
And all you do is make the next person down from you, property tax go up, their property tax go up. You're outpricing the city.
Yeah.
It was the same thing in Colorado. Like where I'm at in Park County is a lot of retired veterans, older people that don't want to be fucked with.
Right.
They're on lots of acreage, no neighbors. You've got all of these short-term rental homes that are being bought sight unseen for $500,000 to $1 million, driving everybody's property
That's
taxes
how it's going up where I live.
when I bought property there for 85 acres, it was designated as
You have 85 acres up there?
Yeah, designated as agricultural. My property taxes every year were about $700 total.
Right.
Once I got rid of my ag tag because we were going to bring in our own stuff, which we've not done yet, my property taxes jumped up to almost $4,000 a year.
Yeah, you got to go back to ag.
I mean, boom, shot
Go
way
back
up.
to ag.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, I live out in
but the
Bolton.
problem is I want the ag for my own animals. What was there is the previous owner had ag rights given to somebody else, and all these cows do, which in the state of Colorado, if you don't want them on your property, you have to fence them out. It's not illegal for them to come on your property.
It's like Nevada the same
Exactly.
way. You can graze
It's
anywhere.
free range grazing, which is great. We love it. We
Yeah.
like seeing the animals. We've got
For sure.
elk, antelope, moose. I mean, we've got black bear on our property, all of that good stuff. But the problem is that you're outpricing and bringing in all these short-term rentals that people are living in for 2 days, 3 days. You're buying houses for $1 million, which, the house next door that's worth $100,000, that's been there for 50 years, suddenly their property tax just tripled.
Yeah.
So it's just like...
Yeah, there's got to be something where it doesn't punish the guy for building the house, the $1 million one, but it also protects
Yeah.
this guy.
Which they're trying to pass all those short-term rental, narrow you down where if you are a short-term rental, you got to pay a higher tax and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is most of these people that come in, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They tear the shit up. They don't respect anybody else's property. You get people wandering on your property, trespassing, coming down to look at the water, jumping your fences and shit. It's just,
Yeah, no, we understand. I've done short-term rentals before, and you have to if you're
yeah.
not good at it, and most people don't give a crap.
No.
They're like, as long as I'm making the money.
Yep.
I don't
Which
care.
you've probably seen the videos of some of the short-term rentals here in town where they have these big-ass ragers. That's all they rent them for, is to have a big-ass rager, and then the freaking drive-by shooting happens. And all the neighbors are like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the first one we had was, I was doing some investing in New Orleans, and so we really liked New Orleans. In fact, it's where I got engaged and everything like that.
New Orleans is great.
Yes, it's just a cool city. We really dug the vibe there. So my wife was like, hey, she was coming down there with me. She's like, you're flipping a bunch. Get us a house down here. So that's what I did. And so we took the crappiest house, turned it into a nice house, and Airbnb'd it, right? Mm-hmm. And in New Orleans, it was fantastic. There was no restrictions. We were getting $900 a night. The guy next door was Airbnb-ing his. So it was the guy over there was doing an Airbnb.
Yeah.
My one neighbor wasn't, and he didn't like the fact that I was, but I worked that out with him through some fellowship. So I understand it from both sides. So what they did in New Orleans is they said, well, it's got to be your homestead for you to do it, which doesn't make any sense because who's going to Airbnb the place with, hey,
yeah,
it's Nick, I'm coming down for coffee.
Every time I see that on the internet, people are like, what are you doing here? Get out.
Anytime I see those, I'm like, no, I'm going there to get away from people. I don't want you anywhere on the property. I'm not going there to be in the same building as you. I'm going there to be alone. So, when I see those, I'm like, I'm sure there's some really cool ones.
There's a way to make it. There's a way to make it work with everybody, but it's just I think the problem with everything right now is you've got it's like a revolution. You've got this digital push that is so good in so many ways, but at the same point in time, if we're not watching our backs, we almost have this Mad Max, or not that Mad Max. Remember when the machines took over in that old movie, and all of a sudden the semis are chasing us and shit?
Terminator.
Yeah, no, there's a good way to monetize it for sure, and it made it the ability to be faster to monetize in an empty space, which is great. Which I totally get that, but.
I think a lot of these quick money schemes and just regulations and things like that, I think, just kind of like you said, people, we see it's so fun right now, but you don't think about the long-term effects after the fact.
Yeah, especially when you're in a neighborhood and then all of your neighbors are short-term rentals, and it's I don't have neighbors.
Yeah.
You're the only one.
Yeah.
Which for some people is fine. That's why we bought property in Colorado, so we don't have neighbors. But not everybody's that way. Some people like to live in the city and have the neighbors and the camaraderie.
I don't really know about that. Yeah, my wife is kind of like that because I was like, hey, let's get something rural.
Yeah, that's
she's
how we are.
We're rural, but I want neighbors. So we're in a community where everybody's got 10 acres.
Oh, your spot's great.
That's how we are, too.
You're 100 yards in every direction from anybody.
We're in Holden.
A good amount of at least minimum distance.
We're in Holden, so we know most of the prominent.
What county is that?
Johnson.
Johnson, Missouri.
Okay.
Out Warrensburg area.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a big enough town that we've got everything you need there, but small enough that
it's an ag
it's
town.
pretty rare to see a strange face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know him.
Yeah, we know most people there.
Oh, there's Ed,
a farmer's
the tweaker.
Market. There's
exactly.
a farmer's market every weekend. Well, that's the thing too, is that when there is something like that, everyone notices.
That's a good thing.
One time we had, I think it was a city thing we were doing, some kind of Easter thing or whatever at the Holden Park, and there was this crackhead dude that came around, and everyone immediately was like, "Nope!" Sheriff was there in no time. Holden PD was there, and they contained him. Well, I was leaving right as he was ripping his shirt off and flexing.
Yeah, that's the other thing, man. Just getting into just kind of a couple questions to wrap up. How many catalytic converters have you guys seen stolen?
I can't even begin to
hundreds.
count.
Probably hundreds.
Couldn't even tell you.
Okay, how much does it cost to replace a catalytic converter?
Depends on the car.
Depends.
Ford Explorer.
Well, so the one thing a lot of people don't realize is there's different mounted ways of catalytic converters.
And
So if
also
you have
some
an,
cars have up to 3 or sometimes even 4
yeah.
hats on them.
So if you have an exhaust manifold mounted catalytic converter, the likelihood of it being stolen is pretty slim because you have to be up in the engine bay to be able to cut it off. Now the ones along the body line or along the actual exhaust line, super easy to steal.
Yeah.
But
Sawzall.
and I mean it take 5 minutes.
We've seen,
if that.
to answer your question, I guess the easiest way is we've had some we've done as cheap as like $250, just like a basic generic universal Weldon 2-inch.
That's taking it in
Real
and taking
quick.
it out, and it's already existing.
No.
Kinda.
Well, depends.
If somebody cut it decent enough when they were being a jackass, then we can just. Sometimes you don't even
Some
have
of
to fix
them
the
are very
ends.
good and nice, clean cuts, and you see others where they've
So
taken
they're
different angles.
respectful things.
Right.
Yeah,
We've
that's
seen
right.
some where they take all sorts of different angles. They cut sensors. I mean, they don't. give a
We've
shit.
had
They
some
cut
get up
everything.
into the thousands.
Yeah.
Like our home store, we use O'Reilly's for the most part for our basic stuff.
Right.
We use the one on 103rd and State Line, and their trucks are routinely getting cats stolen, tanks drilled. One time they stole the cats, and while they were doing it, they
Cut
went
the
through the
brake
cat,
lines.
went through all the brake lines. Like they just caused astronomical damage.
So-
I've replaced probably a dozen fuel tanks at that store alone because
Yeah, that's in Leawood.
A
by the
homeless-
way.
homeless
I can't
people-
believe like the police always are getting reports about it. I can't believe they don't.
they're literally coming by with a drill, drilling a hole in the bottom of the gas tank and stealing a cup of fuel and then letting the remainder 20 gallons flow out on the parking lot.
shit.
And I'm just waiting for the spark to throw from that rotator
Yeah,
because
you're
it's
hoping,
gonna
it, you're
happen.
hoping it does. That guy's running down the road with just freaking.
I mean, I told Kelly last time, I said, as much as I don't want to see one of your cars blown up, I was like, I would love to stop having to replace your fuel tanks.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the thing.
they
People
had
say,
a
"Well, you're
brand
making good
new-
money." I'm like, but I hate doing it.
They had a
I
brand
hate
new
doing
2023 Maverick. They had it for less than a week and
Yeah.
drilled a hole in it. And of course, that fuel tank's not available. It's a brand new car. Nobody's got those yet.
So what do you do?
It's sat there.
It sat there for.
Well, actually, no.
Can
I
you?
take that back.
I mean, can you take it
I
out
take
if
that
it's
back.
got a hole and patch it?
Oh, that's the
Well,
one I patched.
We
isn't it?
have
I was
figured
gonna
out a way to where we have to drop the tank, pull the fuel pump, then we use these really large washers with special silicone that's fuel safe, and basically create the bolt through. So
Yeah,
it's only
we
got a
basically
nut, so they can't
sandwiched
actually
it.
remove it from the inside.
Yeah.
But that's the only way to salvage it because that's like $1,000 fuel tank because it's a brand new car. So
What other crazy shit have you guys seen happen with thieves? What are they stealing?
Thieves, a lot of stolen vehicle or attempted thefts where like you can always tell if someone knew what they were doing or not because well, I mean one if they knew what they're doing the car wouldn't be there but you see some where someone's just astronomically fucking destroyed
Yeah.
the steering
what
column.
went from a lock cylinder is now the whole car.
Just drilled a gaping hole, hammered this, broke that, and it's just like dude like
All right, so here's a better question. What's the best way to steal a vehicle?
well it depends on the vehicle.
All right, let's take my Ford Raptor. You got to have that.
Well, most of them now have those repeaters, those
Yes,
transponder
you'd have to have a
repeaters.
scrambler or a repeater.
So you can get a scrambler. People don't know that, right?
Yeah.
So what does a scrambler do?
Well, basically, all your fob is doing is it's a binary code. It's a bunch of zeros.
Yeah,
and
it's an
ones.
RFID chip, and it's a proximity
You hit start,
sensor.
your vehicle says, "Hey, where's this code?" And your key gets that. Here's, hey, what's this code? And it says, "Hey, this is the code." And the car says, "Okay."
So
we're good."
arguably, they're easier to steal.
in a way,
They can be.
Because I've seen guys going through neighborhoods and like,
Just waiting for the lights to flip on the car.
Yeah,
otherwise
so
they-
that's not as common anymore.
So what they're doing there is they're amplifying the signal from the fob inside the house. If your fob is close enough to the vehicle, they can amplify it and bridge the gap. And basically, once the car is started, most of
Yeah,
them
you
are
don't need
drivable
Yeah.
until you turn it off.
yeah, I've lost keys before,
But like
and
my
then driven cars.
my newer F350 I have, if that key is not in that car, whether it's on and not in remote start mode, it will not allow you to shift it.
Yeah,
It
some
will not allow
vehicles,
you to
even if
shift
it's
it.
sitting there running, like if it doesn't detect the key, as soon as you hit the brake, it'll turn off. Or some of them just won't come out of park. Like they'll run and they'll operate, but they won't let you move it. But the reality of like cars like that is that when the guys are boosting these cars, they're not taking them to joyride. They're not
They're
taking them to sell
stripping
the
them.
car. They're stripping them.
What are they stripping them for?
Parts. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen like the Hellcat.
I mean,
shenanigans.
those engines.
Dude,
I haven't seen any shenanigans. What's going on with that?
Oh, do you see like in like Detroit and like a lot of inner city areas? At least this is what it seems to be on the internet anyway. People will just go outside one day and there'll just be like a chassis sitting there with on blocks,
just stripped,
doors gone, hood gone,
everything.
trunk lid gone, seats gone, interior gone,
The
motor gone,
aftermarket
tranny gone.
market for that stuff, or the salvage market, is huge. That's why LKQ and Midway and all the pick and pulls.
Well, those
do
cars
so
are
well.
like a perfect recipe for this because one, they're already expensive to begin with. Two, most people that are getting this either don't know how to work on cars, don't know how to drive the damn things, or both, and they're going out with all their friends and they're just tearing shit up.
And that's what you see the
spinning
side
tires,
street
and then they're
here in
blowing
Kansas
their
City,
shit up, and then they're
doing
like,
the
oh, I need a new
donuts
motor
and all of that.
Yeah, so the guys that are
Scat
got
Packs,
theirs.
Hellcats, Chargers, 6.1, 6.2s, the 392. I mean, all.
We had
of
a guy
those.
do a bunch of donuts over and over and over again here. You can go look at my top of my parking lot.
nice where we parked.
Yeah. So you saw it, and we just put in those curbs to stop them from doing it. And I posted that video, and everybody's like, "You Karen? Like, why the hell are you carrying?" I'm like, "Dude, it's damage to private property. They're doing."
Well, not
shit.
only that, but the next thing is the Glock comes out and we start firing shots.
Right.
You know, that's always the next thing that comes from any of the sideshow street shit that I see here in Kansas
Always
City.
some shenanigans.
Next thing that occurs, somebody gets pissed off, and next thing you know, the Glocks start coming out.
There used
We
to be a
start
pretty
shooting.
decent car culture around here on Front Street. There used to be, granted they were illegal street races, but they were like in an industrial area. People were generally pretty cool about it, to the point that even cops would drive by and watch two cars just haul ass down the line.
Right.
They wouldn't do anything about it because
Nowadays,
it's not
we're doing
hurting
it in the
anything.
plaza in the middle of a busy intersection while there's people that aren't even involved in it, trying to get home and get to places, and we're just ripping it. You know,
It's highly
all the
irritating. It
videos I
ruins
see
car
of people, you know,
culture.
filming and getting smacked by the rear end of the car, swimming around. I mean, it's just, it's
It
ridiculous.
ruins it for the rest of us. It's really annoying. The same thing happened back. Remember when all the motorcycle shenanigans were going on? See all the guys that were surrounding cars and beating the shit out of people and
Well, the
like,
middle of the
waving through
map,
traffic.
middle of the map ride is the biggest issue. I mean, that's
Dude, it got.
one every
There were times
year
like when
that's
I'd be out on my
problematic.
bike and somebody cut me off and flipped me off, and for no other reason than I'm just the guy on a sport bike. It's like, bro, like I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. Like, whenever I'm on a motorcycle, I feel like I can run from anything. You know what I mean? Like,
the right bike, you can.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, good luck, dude.
I mean, I've had cherries and berries flipped on and then turned back off because we're not gonna catch that. So,
yeah, it's a fun feeling
I mean,
for sure. Like, you know,
yeah,
just
my wife didn't like it. She was like, "Don't ever fucking do that again." But I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, we got no tags."
Well, I'll tell you one.
so-
I'll tell you one on record here because it never happened. But like, I had played the tape for it a bunch of my times, and that same officer who pulled me over with the gun. Was coming through where I live is between Smithville and Platte City.
Yeah,
But
you got nothing but
Oh, you know where I'm
straight
at. Yeah, you know where I'm
highway.
at. Okay,
yeah,
so-
you got
so-
open 3-lane, 4-lane highway
and cornfields.
and cornfields.
So
and one church.
and I know every cornfield in that because I've taken my razor there, and I was with my son because he likes to go. My daughter doesn't like to see me drift. You know,
Right.
my son's like he's used to it by now.
he
So
likes
I'm-
to lose traction.
Yeah, so I'm out there drifting and doing things, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go run you up and get a cup of coffee. And I'm coming down the hill there at Martin Road, and I look out of the corner of my eye, and I see it's the same. I've been pulled over twice since I've been here in 3 years. It's the same cop that pulled me at gunpoint. First thing I thought of is like, I'm going, and I look at my son, I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm gone. Good luck. You don't. Now he knows my vehicle. There's no
Right,
freaking
yeah.
way that I could ever do that. This is not the time to teach my son that rule.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because they do pick that up. They're like,
yeah.
oh, I saw Daddy do that.
I know, dude. It's like even the little things. Like I gotta really start watching my mouth around my kids.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. I was
It's
just
pretty-
I was just in the car with Danny the other day, and since he's there, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, freak. I mean,
No, they're so impressive. I got an 18-month-old, and I've already got him on the dirt. I got a little 50cc dirt bike that was for my daughter. I mean, if it burns propellant and runs on something, he mows the yard with me, rides the wave runner,
My
rides a
boy's the
dirt
same
bike.
way.
I mean,
as soon as if I can,
go,
I can
go,
just be
go.
moving a bike just to get it out of the way
Once
to do
sit on
something,
it.
and he's
Monkey
like,
see,
"Huh?
monkey."
I go park, bike, like you're gonna bike."
well, you guys are the same ways. Like you're a product of that environment, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, man, I enjoyed chatting with you guys again. You guys, I didn't realize we were going to get on politics and all
I was
sorts
saying
of
we didn't really stay on the car stuff. but-
Yeah, but that's
maybe-
okay. That's
maybe
okay.
next time.
Yeah. Maybe
Unlike most mechanics, I mean, our breadth of knowledge is.
I was gonna say, man, if you guys
and-
weren't freaking mechanics, I think you guys should be working for fucking NASA or some shit.
I mean, I think it's also why our reputation is so good, because we do like to converse with people. We make them not feel
Also
dumb.
explain things in a way that
I mean,
your average person.
Your
can
average
understand.
mechanic's rough around the edges. You
For
know,
sure.
not the cleanest cut person.
Neck
We like to
tattoos
try and
and
break that
gauges.
mold. We like to engage with people. If we can show and tell.
Get
that
those
it's-
Hugo Boss outfits.
Yeah.
There you go.
When we first started, you know, with our logo, I was like, man, if we could find like some jumpsuits that were like, you know, your normal mechanic jumpsuits with a bow tie, but then I was like, dude, that'd be so fucking hot in the summer. Like, it is so
I wore
hot
this just
here.
for you. In the summer, I'm not wearing this thing.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's canvas, and this thing is it's a sauna.
Right now, the weather's probably perfect for you guys.
No,
Is it
No,
too,
it's
just
already
too
hot.
it's already too
I mean,
hot?
we work anyways, but it's already
What do you
hot.
prefer, too hot or too cold, though?
I go too cold.
I'm cold.
Yeah.
You like cold?
Yeah.
Well,
You guys are
working-
from the Midwest,
For
dude.
working on cars, cold. But like generally speaking, no. Like if I had a choice, like if I'm about to go out and I know I'm gonna be hot, I'm gonna be hot. That's my preference for sure.
Yeah.
Like beach days or whatever. Where I don't like the heat is where like I don't know, you're going somewhere and whatever, and you that 5 minutes you're out in the heat and now you're all fucking like, God man, like I'm all sweaty and this sucks, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
the
if
way
I know I'm gonna be hot and I'm dressed to be hot and I'm already in my head where I'm about to be hot and I don't have anything going on,
I'm
I would
fine with
much
it.
prefer
Yeah.
that.
If I'm in nice clothes and I get hot, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But if I'm in my work clothes, I'm like, this is how it is.
One last question about Missouri, because you just brought it up, and it's my goal this year. It was my goal last year. I didn't do it. I want to ride a wave runner from St. Joe to Kansas City. I never see anybody on the damn
On the river?
Yeah. Why do you say who? You know what I mean? Like everybody says that. I must be the dumbest
Well,
person around, but I feel like
I do-
that's a good idea.
I-
Rivers are a little sketchy because of the undertow. And
yeah, but just swim to shore.
that's
not
not
how that
always
works.
possible. Undertow usually.
What the hell about undertow?
Yeah, undertow usually pulls you under. and
Yeah, but
that's
you're
the
on a
problem.
wave runner.
Shenanigans
Yeah,
happen on
you never
wave runners.
know.
I've thrown myself off.
If you
wave
up
runner
into a
plenty of
fan
times.
boat, I'll come with you.
Okay,
I'll do a fan boat.
dude. You know what I really want? A hovercraft.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
How cool would that be?
That'd be pretty cool, but I've been seeing these really sick 6-liter LS built, like twin turbo LS fan boats. And
I
they've
want a
got-
fan
they've got
boat.
the
I definitely want a fan
skid
boat.
plate in the
Well,
bottom.
you're in Florida. You gotta have a fan
Dude,
boat.
I see videos all the time where guys will, well, I don't know how they're doing it. I guess bolting like a sheet of plexiglass at the bottom, and they are on the street, they're in the yard, they're in the lake,
Yeah.
they're wherever that thing will slide. They're in
You
their
like
fan
going
boat.
fast then too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like going fast. There's like it's the weirdest thing. Like if I'm slow and I'm on the top of a building like that, I get that nervous
weird, yeah.
feeling on heights and stuff. But if I'm going 140 miles an hour, I feel good.
Oh,
Exhilarating.
As long as you know
I
what
feel
you're-
like completely in control.
Oh yeah, as long as you know what you're doing and you've done it before, or even somewhat reasonable in your abilities, like I'm totally with it. Like even this last week, and we were at the Ozarks at our grandparents' place, had my toddler with me sitting in front of me, and our grandpa's got one of his red wave runners fast as shit.
It's like a
I mean,
supercharged 1100.
Yeah, I had that thing, and we were doing like 60.
I need to
and,
get one.
and my son was just like, just having a blast. But my wife's just like always like, he can go with you because I
Dude,
don't
if you,
trust
ever, if
myself.
you want a wave runner and you ever have some throwaway money, it is like my dream to build a Hayabusa swapped Sea-Doo. So if you
It's
ever
a
want something
1400
crazy,
I literally just want the way. Right now, when I get to Florida, I'm gonna probably want one.
Yeah.
But when we do, we're gonna be doing the back and forth. But right now, what I want is just a wave runner to rent.
Yeah.
And then to do that thing, and then probably to go to Smithville Lake because that looks like a good time.
Smithville. Have you ever been to the Ozarks?
I haven't, but Smithville Lake's 10 minutes from my house.
Yeah, well, the only reason I bring up Ozarks, Smithville's gonna be a lot smoother. The Ozarks is like the fucking ocean in the Midwest. I mean, there's waves that are swells that are huge.
Yeah, it gets
and so
wild.
I mean, I've jumped my daughter and I, 15 feet up out of the water off some waves. I mean, there's some big ass.
Oh, I got a
boats
good
out
story
there.
for you. You want to hear about that? So I'm in Costa Rica, okay, on a Sea-Doo. And
In the ocean.
In the ocean, and nobody wants to ride except for me and this other guy. And the other guys, we're in this bachelor party in Costa Rica, and I
Well,
got
you
this.
got to.
Yeah, I'm like everybody else doesn't want to ride. I want to ride. This guy wants to ride. So we're cruising along by all the rocks and stuff, and like I'm hauling ass doing this for probably like an hour. We're having a great time. I'm looking back, checking on this guy. I don't know him. I think his name was Rick or something. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
Rick.
Yeah, and so like all of a sudden, I'm jumping, you know, just like you're talking, this one, boom, just having a blast, okay? I jump this one, all of a sudden it clears out. I
And
look.
Rick's there.
There's a freaking rock there.
Oh no.
And I am literally like, my heart just went like, and I'm like, I went like this. I'm not even Catholic. I did whatever this is. And I'm like, I'm toast, and I closed my eyes. And when I opened them, the water had come back. But I did look to see if Rick was there, and Rick wasn't there.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh, fuck, dude, he didn't make it. I made it. He didn't make it. How am I going to go back
It's
and
gonna be Castaway with
Yeah,
you.
and turns out he just didn't follow me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but
That would be scary right
yeah,
there.
it was definitely the, you know, because I've been riding jet skis for years, and that was the scariest moment.
That's
on
a
jet.
balls in your throat
Yeah.
situation
Oh, yeah,
right
but
there.
I-
Especially on somebody else's unit, like, oh shit.
So that's
Hope they
Well,
got
that was a
insurance.
rental. So.
Yeah. That's what you pay for the insurance, right?
All right, guys. Well, how do people follow you? How do they get a hold of your business right now online? If they want to book something for you guys to come out, take a look at their vehicle. If they want you, how do they get a hold of you?
Several different ways. One, they can follow us on Facebook. We try and post a lot of pictures of what we do. They can get a hold of us on Facebook. The best way is by
Facebook at where?
Facebook, Taylor D Mechanics.
Taylor D Mechanics Facebook.
They can go to our website, which is kansascitymobilemechanic.com. We have a request section up in the right-hand corner. They can drop us a request on there. They can
Okay.
also call or text us, which is 816-281-5884. Text is usually best. We can respond quicker because we do respect clients' time while we're on a repair. But lots of different ways to get a hold of us. We try and be attentive to that and getting back to people. So.
What can they expect? Just so transparency, because I'm sure you don't want to answer all these questions. Like, what do you guys charge for? You guys charge by the hour?
Yep. So we're $125 for the first hour. It's service minimum, covers up to 1 hour's time. Then we're $100 an hour after the first hour. We can book full days, half days. We'll give you estimates based on experience on whatever the repair type is, because we've seen so many things. You know, a lot of
Also-
places will give you a book rate where it's like, well, the book says, and well, we don't go by that because usually we move faster. So a lot of people are like, well,
That's what I was gonna say. Is like, even though you guys are by the hour, you guys move
Oh, we
fast.
move a lot
I've
faster.
watched, like, I met you at Andrea's office, and I watched you do multiple repairs
Oh,
over
yeah.
there.
Yeah, we run circles around people because a lot of people, you know, most shops, they'll quote you an hour and finish in 20 minutes and smoke a cigarette for 40, you know, that type of deal.
You guys don't have time.
When we get on site, you know, we're loaded up every day. You know, we're scheduled per day, so it's not like we're sitting on our hands. So, like, when we get there, we're dedicated and involved in your job, and we're there to get it done.
Yeah,
we're
we
not there to,
always have
you know,
stuff going
piddle
on.
around and dick around.
Right, you don't gotta.
We're there.
Yeah,
get
you
it
gotta go to
done.
the next one.
Exactly.
Like, you don't just gotta go buy time in the
No.
in the break room and
Yep.
smoke a cigarette, grab a donut, steal.
No,
You know.
no.
It's funny because a lot of people seem to think that that's what we're doing all the time. So people like, oh, I need you to come out tomorrow or whatever. I'm like, bro, I'm not just sitting around waiting. Like,
Yeah.
thank God you called. I didn't know what I was gonna do this week.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you're good.
Well, and yeah, and that's the other thing is a lot of the other mobile mechanics are just sitting on their hands and feet because they burn people, they're not busy, and so when they get a hold of us, I mean,
people get mad about it. We're like, we can't be out there till like next week. I'm like, oh, fine, well, whatever, and then like hang out.
No, I understand that. I was a little bit mad
Which
when you
I
guys
get
took
it.
me at the beginning first. I was like, what? And then you just realize that, like, you're in demand. So just
Yeah.
schedule, because
I mean-
everybody wants their shit done now.
Yeah.
Everybody, right?
But you know, cheap is cheap. I mean, you expect cheap labor, you get cheap repairs. You know.
I agree a lot of times on that, but I always say, like, there's like, if the guy is turning the wrench and doing the job, usually, and he's charging a good rate, it's not going to be the cheapest rate. But if you know that guy's turning the wrench, like whether he's turning a screwdriver or a wrench, and you're talking to him and he's the business owner, generally you're going to get a good fair price.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's the guy that
a service rider giving you an
right,
estimate.
like, and he's selling out somebody else's rate. He's got no vested interest. You guys are doing everything from the
Yeah.
billing to the work to everything.
Yep.
You don't want to go back there and have a bad situation. I'm
Oh,
sure
no.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
heavily Google review driven.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got over 230, you know, Google 5-star reviews, which we try and drive everybody there because it separates us from everybody else. It's where a lot of people find us. But a lot of what I do, because I do all of the scheduling and everything, is I will listen to the client or what they need, or you know, them tell me their symptoms. And we'll bring a handful of things that are within that realm of things so that we will get there, confirm the issue, and we've already got the part. we'll go ahead and replace it. We don't want any money up front from people, because we get people like, oh, the last guy did this and then stole the money. We don't do any of that.
Yeah.
We're a large enough company between the two of us that we can afford and will buy and bring the parts with us and send anything we don't need back, but that expedites your repair time, because we don't have to chase parts. Maybe that item wasn't in stock, but because I have it, we don't have to wait now another 3 days or 4 days. So my goal is always, try. I've seen it so many different things. We work on so many things that when you tell me something, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe we need
we've
to bring
seen
this.
almost everything.
So that way we're already ready. So that way a lot of people are like, oh, you already have it? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm trying to save you money. Like, now I don't have to go find it. It's not available. Like, I've got it.
If somebody explains something good enough to us,
not even good enough sometimes, because
sometimes we can diagnose before we even get there sometimes.
Right, you know how to ask the right questions.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing, the outside circumstances, which actually a lot of guys in the comments on the last video were talking about, like the forums and stuff, is that you can do a lot of guesswork and a lot of knowing, but there's always going to be that little one-off where a mouse got in your car, or chewed a wire, or whatever, and you get these guys in the forums like, you're a fucking idiot, I've seen this happen, if the coil's not sparking, it's a bad coil. It's like, okay, well, I just got there and a squirrel chewed the wire in half.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's totally, man. Listen, like I said, everybody, it's always the squirrel in the comments. It's actually
everybody's got an opinion about everything.
And that's why it's so fun to get on there and just be a troll sometimes.
Yeah, I do that every once in a while too. Last final question, just because it was a little bit of the undertow here is, do you guys see yourself living in America for the rest of your lives?
In America?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love this country.
Okay.
I think we just have some changes to make, and we need to get people back into that mindset.
The way he and I live, the way he lives, the way goal for Colorado is back to the old days, homesteading, do it all on your own,
That's what me and my wife do at
livestock.
home.
I mean,
yeah, I love it.
I've got
beyond
horses.
that,
I'd love to run cattle. I'd love to be, doing the old
far
school.
beyond that, even like in like the cities and stuff like that. Like the best example I can think of right now is this whole Israel Gaza thing going on right now.
Right.
And I would love to say to some of these people that are out there and saying death to America and blah blah blah, I dare you, go to Russia and say you hate Russia. Go to China and say you hate China. Go anywhere else damn near and say you hate that place and see how that goes for you.
Yeah.
That alone, that little tiny detail should tell you how great this country is.
We just need to get united and start like protecting all of our personal rights versus trying to strip other people's rights away. That's what I think we need to do. It's like, hey, you know what?
But I think it's deeper than that. I think we need to correct the media and stop telling people that we're taking our rights.
Yeah. Right.
The people that are the Antifa, the anti-fascists, whatever people, those are the most fascist motherfuckers among us.
Yeah, dude.
You're not letting me speak. You're not letting me access public property. You're restricting me from doing things, and you're calling me a fascist? What the fuck is that?
Yeah. Well, it's the old, if you're not it, call the other person it. It's the craziest thing in the book. But it's always an enjoyable conversation with you guys. We'll have to make this a regular thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So thanks for spending your time with me. I know that's your most valuable commodity, so I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, fellas. One of the accomplishments I'm most proud of on social media is the 150 episodes that we've done on the Millionaire Mentorship Podcast. The Millionaire Mentorship Podcast is exactly that. It's a bunch of guests who have achieved a financial status and people like yourself that you can learn from. We have entrepreneurs, we have real estate investors, businessmen, digital marketers, politicians, local people, and national people whose stories will inspire you. You need to check it out and make sure you give us a 5-star review when you do. All you gotta do is comment the word podcast and I'll link it to it right now.